Chapter 475. I won't compromise. I won't compromise. Haha. Gu Junjian laughed heartily as he was quite frank about it. Gu Junjian didn't want Qin Yiru to think that he was trying to appease her, so he sighed and said, "Don't think that I'm so noble. I'm just like those of us from the special forces. What kind of place haven't we slept in? How could there be a big bed when we're out in the wild? It's like using the sky as your room and the ground as your bed. Hee hee, I'm used to it." Gu Junjian wasn't trying to get Qin Yiru to sympathize with him, but he was trying to convey that he wasn't a spoiled person. He wouldn't dislike this place just because the living conditions were bad. "Officer Gu, you're also someone with a story." Qin Yiru smiled, but her expression wasn't as stiff as before. Gu Junjian was easy to get along with, so Qin Yiru didn't feel pressured. "Aye, that's right. Who doesn't have a story when they're at our age?" Gu Junjian's smile weakened a little. He seemed to have recalled some sad memories. "That's right." Qin Yiru rubbed the back of her hands. Standing in the courtyard, the cold wind outside still made her shiver. "Officer Gu, let's go inside quickly. It's windy outside. Look, I didn't treat you well. I forgot that you were playing chess in the courtyard. The wind is so cold. Let's go inside quickly." Qin Yiru suddenly remembered that Gu Junjian and Ce had moved stools and folding tables outside to play chess. It wasn't that cold outside, and there were lights outside Zhang Meihua's house. Gu Junjian was playing chess just now, so he forgot that he was still in the courtyard. However, after Qin Yiru reminded him, he immediately felt a little cold. He nodded and said, "Aye, that's good. Haha, I was playing chess so well that I forgot that I'm already numb from the cold. I'm getting old. Haha." As he spoke, Gu Junjian helped Qin Yiru put away the folding table, low stool, and other things into the house. Gu Junjian was an upright person. When Qin Yiru packed up her things and wanted to move the folding table and other clumsy things back into the house, he rushed to help her. Qin Yiru immediately had a good impression of Gu Junjian. Moreover, it was still early, so Yun Jian and Ce brought Xiao Yunju to shop at the store. After Zhang Meihua finished packing, she went to Xinjiang Town's town hall for a square dance. In this era, square dancing had already begun to sprout. As for Qin Liqian and his family, they were already nestled in their beds. They did not stay up for the new year as sleeping late was not good for their health. Furthermore, they cared about their health, so they went to bed early. Coincidentally, there was no one around and they had nothing to do. Seeing that Ce, Yun Jian, and Xiao Yunju were not around, and Yun Yi had also returned to her room, Qin Yiru simply moved a stool over and started chatting with Gu Junjian in the house. They talked about their lives, their past, and their experiences. Qin Yiru and Gu Junjian were people who had spent half their lives, so naturally, they had experienced many things. They would not have known if they did not ask, but after asking, they found out that Gu Junjian had already divorced his ex-wife. The reason was that he was in the military and could not stay at home all year round to accompany his wife and son. His wife could not stand it and ran away with another man. There was only one son left in the family. However, his son was currently studying abroad and would not return home for the new year. Therefore, even if it was the eve of the new year, when he reunited with his family, Gu Junjian felt that it did not matter whether he went home or not. Because if he went home, he would be the only one in the large and empty villa. Chapter 476. After listening to Gu Junjian's experience, Qin Yiru could also feel a trace of sadness from Gu Junjian's words. "Officer Gu must have loved your wife very much back then, right?" Qin Yiru asked. She was already in her 40s and had already given birth to 2 children. However, for some reason, she was interested in Gu Junjian's affairs. Gu Junjian seemed to have no one to vent his frustrations on all these years. Now that he met Qin Yiru, it was as if he finally had a place to vent his frustrations. He nodded and then shook his head. "At that time I just thought that she was pretty. I don't know if I loved her or not. In any case, this marriage was arranged by my parents when they were still alive. Later on, she suddenly said that she wanted to divorce me, so I immediately agreed. Actually, I still have some feelings for her. After all, we have been together for so many years." Qin Yiru also understood after hearing Gu Junjian's explanation. She reckoned that Gu Junjian's marriage was the kind of marriage where the two families were well matched in terms of social status. The rich and powerful families of the upper class were particular about matching in terms of social status. Moreover, marriage matching would also involve the interests of both families. Gu Yunjian's behavior was just like that of someone from a rich and powerful family. Actually, I'm also a little similar to you. Qin Yiru also shook her head and smiled. The night was long, but the two hearts that had been without love in their early years and had been alone and bumpy along the way gradually formed a line of intersection on two parallel lines that would never intersect. It was just that no one had noticed it yet. Going back to when Ce was dragging Yunju and Yunjian to the shop just now, Yunjian's expression changed drastically. Woof woof. Woof woof woof. It was already late at night. The night between 8:30 p.m. and 12 o'clock p.m. on New Year's Eve was the quietest. Occasionally, the sound of fireworks would resound through the sky. However, after the sound of fireworks subsided, it would be a deep silence. Yunjian and the other two could even hear the barking of dogs. Sister, brother Ce, leave quickly. Xiao Zhu is scared. There's a dog. Xiao Yunju held Yunjian's hand with one hand and Ce's hand with the other. His short legs ran even faster, and his body leaned forward like a little hero charging forward. Xiao Zhu, don't be afraid. Big sister and your Gij Ce are here. Yunjian comforted her, but Xiao Yunju still pulled her along. He didn't hear any barking the last time he came out, but this time, he heard a series of barks. Ce strode forward with his slender legs. Every step he took was enough for Xiao Yunju to drag him and Yunjian along for quite a distance. He smirked and turned slightly to the left. From the corner of his eye, he could see Yunjian's clean and delicate face through the moonlight. Xiao Yunju ran very fast when he passed by the door of the group of brats. A glint flashed across Ce's eyes. In the end, Xiao Yunju dragged the two of them to the entrance of the store. There were many people standing at the entrance of the store. These people seemed to be here to buy fireworks. Yunjian was pulled along by Xiao Yunju and Ce as they walked over. Hee. It's you guys. At this moment, a childlike laughter suddenly rang out. Yunjian turned her head and saw a little boy about the same age as Xiao Yunju standing beside an adult looking at them. This adult seemed to be here to buy fireworks. There was a group of people behind this little boy. They were also a group of children, and they seemed to be his playmates. Wasn't this little boy the crew-cut brat who lit the firecrackers to bomb her and Xiao Yunju? Yunjian narrowed her eyes. Chapter 477. This boy with a crew cut was called Wei Jin. He was one of the most mischievous children in the group. Yunjian and Xiao Yunju had just passed by his house. When he heard his friend's words, Wei Jin immediately picked up a small firecracker to attack Yunjian and Xiao Yunju, especially when it was obvious that he was brainless. At this time, another child beside him egged him on, and Wei Jin immediately became angry. He had just been scolded by his mother because of the two people in front of him. This is our territory. You are not allowed to come over. Before Yunjian and Xiao Yunju could say anything, Wei Jin had already put his hands on his hips and called for his friends to hold hands and form a wall, not allowing Yunjian and the other two to pass. Children's thoughts were very naive. When the surrounding adults saw what Wei Jin and his group of children did, they simply ignored them. Idiot! When Xiao Yunju saw this, he withdrew his small hands from Yunjian and Ce's hands and pulled his eyelids down. He stuck his tongue out at Wei Jin and the others and made a funny face. What? He said we are idiots. You are the idiot, you are the idiot, you are the idiot. When Wei Jin heard this, his short and chubby body immediately walked over. Jin, come on, hit him. Chase them away. A group of boys stood behind Wei Jin and cheered. They were all typical brats. With this coaxing, Wei Jin became even more enthusiastic. When the adults weren't paying attention, he ran over and stretched out his hand to push Xiao Yunju. When children fought with children, it was usually you push me and I push you. Because the children were still young, most children didn't know any other complicated actions other than pushing each other around. However, when Wei Jin ran in front of Xiao Yunju and wanted to give him a hard push, Ce grabbed his wrist. You let go. This is between us men. Wei Jin used the attitude of an adult and looked up stubbornly at Ce. You want to bully him? Ce lowered her head and looked at Wei Jin, who was as fat as a rice ball. Her low voice was filled with dissatisfaction. He caused me to be scolded by my mother, so he wants to pay it back. Wei Jin gritted his teeth. Ha! Ce suddenly let go of Wei Jin's fat fingers. He snorted softly and didn't care about anything else when he let go. Wei Jin was a child after all. Since Ce had let go of his hand all of a sudden, he stumbled 2 steps backward and fell to the floor on his back. When he fell to the ground, his hands and buttocks didn't hurt, but Wei Jin sat on the ground and cried, "Granny! Granny! Sob, sob, sob. Someone is bullying me." Wei Jin's crying attracted the attention of the adults who were still buying fireworks. Hearing that, an old lady in her 50s wearing flowery clothes ran out of the store while swaying her but in a very westernized manner. The old lady was still shouting, "Oh, my little baby! What happened? What happened?" After a while, the old lady rushed in front of Wei Jin and carefully pulled him up as if he was a treasure. "My precious grandson, what's wrong? Who bullied you? Granny will help you kill them even if I have to risk my life." This old lady was Wei Jin's grandmother, Mu Lanhua. When Mu Lanhua saw her precious grandson fall, her heart almost fell out of her chest. Chapter 478. Wei Jin's cries of pain made Mu Lanhua's heart ache. Mu Lanhua hurriedly pulled her precious grandson up and checked him from head to toe. She mumbled, "Oh, my baby. Where does it hurt? Granny will blow on it and it won't hurt anymore." Mu Lanhua was extremely nervous. She looked Wei Jin up and down to make sure that he was fine. Then, she turned around and glared at Yunjian and the rest. This was her family's only child. In this generation, she only had one grandson. Although she had granddaughters, none of them were as valuable as her grandson. Therefore, Mu Lanhua had always doted on and protected Wei Jin since he was young. She was afraid that he would get hurt. But now, her precious grandson was pushed by someone. Mu Lanhua was furious. She reached out her scrawny hands and pointed her wrinkled fingers at Ce. She shouted angrily, "Were you the one who pushed my grandson?" Wei Jin hid behind Mu Lanhua and stuck his tongue out at Xiao Yunju when he heard that his grandmother was standing up for him. He shook his head and made a funny face. Obviously, Wei Jin became even more arrogant when he saw that his grandmother was standing up for him. Although Xiao Yunju was still young, he could understand the meaning behind Wei Jin's actions. Xiao Yunju was instantly enraged. "You're so naughty." Xiao Yunju glared back. However, Xiao Yunju had only taken 2 steps forward when Yunjian pulled him in front of her. "I didn't push him." Ce didn't show any signs of fear. He only twitched the corner of his mouth and smiled mockingly. He really didn't push Wei Jin. He reached out to grab Wei Jin's wrist because Wei Jin wanted to push Xiao Yunju. He let go just now because he didn't care about Wei Jin. However, he didn't do anything. Wei Jin's body was covered in fat, and his short and chubby body automatically collapsed to the ground. So what if he pushed Wei Jin? How dare he bully Xiao Zhu in front of him? He, Ce, had already shown mercy by not killing him. If Yunjian's family was not here, her family would not allow it. He didn't want to waste any more time talking to Wei Jin. It would be easier to just kill him. Not to mention that the child was innocent. Since Ce could become the leader of an Hun, she was definitely not a benevolent person. Now, because of Yunjian, he could even restrain himself. "You didn't push it? If you didn't push my baby, why would she fall to the ground? Young man, you look decent. How can you be so unreasonable? Ha! My grandson is still a child. You pushed him away and refused to admit it. Is there any justice in this world?" Mu Lanhua brought up a bunch of topics as soon as she spoke. As soon as Mu Lanhua spoke, the people around her immediately agreed. That's right, that's right. Don't tell me that the child would fall on his own. This young man is really... He pushed someone down, but he doesn't admit it. The one who spoke was a long-tongued woman from the village. She usually liked to gossip and jeer with others. In fact, she did not even see if it was Ce who pushed Wei Jin to the ground. "Brother Ce. They're all bad." Xiao Yunju tugged at Ce's sleeve in fear. The little one hid in Yunjian's arms. Ce's hawk-like gaze sharpened as the corner of his brow on his flawless face lifted slightly. He didn't speak. Mu Lanhua scolded for a long time. When she saw that Ce ignored her, she became angry. Then, she saw Yunjian standing beside Ce. Seeing that Yunjian was pretty, She felt that she was easy to talk to. Hence, Mu Lanhua decided to use Yun Jian as a target. Young lady, are you this young man's girlfriend? Ha, I'm telling you as an experienced person. People like him should stay away from him as soon as possible. He. Chapter 479. Ce shifted his gaze from Yun Jian to Mu Lanhua. There was a murderous glint in his eyes as his murderous aura flared. What did you just say? Say it again. He repeated her words. However, the tone that came out of his mouth was chilling. It was as if he would kill Mu Lanhua if she dared to say the same thing again. Mu Lanhua was also shocked by Ce's sudden change in demeanor. Her old bones trembled violently. The group of people who were watching the show were also frightened to the point that they quivered slightly. Say. Say what? You want me to say? I'll say it. Mu Lanhua was so frightened by Ce's demeanor that she stuttered. However, Mu Lanhua was an old woman. If she didn't suffer any real pain, she wouldn't be afraid at all. Ce sneered when he saw Mu Lanhua's frightened look. This old woman actually wanted her to leave him. This was something that Ce would never allow to happen. Once he set his mind on someone, even if she died, she would be his. No one could take her away from him. He reached out and placed his slender fingers beside his belt. There was a pistol hidden here. Since this old woman had crossed his bottom line, he would not hold back anymore. Although it was troublesome to kill a person, it was just a matter of words for the Hun organization to destroy a person completely. And since when had he, Ce, ever restricted himself to anyone? Ce was just about to reach for his pistol when a pair of soft hands held him back. Glancing at her from the corner of her eyes, she saw Yun Jian's pretty face shaking from side to side. She meant to tell him not to kill. Seeing her gesture and the fact that her hand was still holding his, Ce's anger dissipated instantly and he let go of her. Yun Jian did not stop Ce because she could not bear to see him kill. She had killed so many people in her previous life that she could pave a bloody path. She and he were walking on the same path. However, in front of Xiao Yunju, Yun Jian did not want him to relive the terrible scene. More importantly, it was New Year's Eve. According to Qin Yiru's words, they should celebrate the new year peacefully so that everyone could be safe in the coming year. Mu Lanhua had no idea that she had just escaped with her life. She was now afraid of Ce. This was because the aura emitted by Ce frightened her. How shocking! Horrifying! Mu Lanhua fiercely glared at Ce, as well as Yun Jian and Xiao Yunju. She cursed as she dragged Wei Jin into the store. Mu Lanhua continued, Jin, let's go. Granny loves you. Granny will buy you a bunch of delicious food. Mu Lanhua was immensely pleased with herself when she said this. Wei Jin was a left-behind child. Mu Lanhua doted on Wei Jin and provided him with good food and drink since he was young. Wei Jin's parents worked outside and only came back during the new year. At the same time, Wei Jin's parents worked at construction sites and received a high salary. Therefore, whatever Wei Jin wanted, Mu Lanhua never lacked for him. It could be said that Mu Lanhua's family was considered very rich in a town in 1998. Therefore, Mu Lanhua spoke with a deep sense of pride. On the other hand, Ce came to Xinjiang town dressed very plainly. His clothes were from a street stall, but they were surprisingly compatible with Yun Jian. Therefore, Mu Lanhua thought that Ce was poor from the start, which was why she was so aggressive. Boss, give my grandson 5 packets of potato chips, 10 lollipops. Oh right, and 10 packets of haojia. Mu Lanhua shouted at the top of her lungs the moment she entered the store, as if she was afraid that people did not know that her family was rich. Okay. The shop owner nodded with a smile. At this time, Ce and Yun Jian had already accompanied Xiao Yunju into the store. Mu Lanhua looked at Yun Jian and the others with a look that said, Can you afford it? Chapter 480. 10 times. He wanted to buy everything in the store. When the group saw Ce tossing his bank card in front of the cashier counter and making such a bold declaration, they were all stupefied. The store had been open for a few years and had all kinds of things. However, it would take at least tens of thousands of yuan to buy everything in the store. Yet, Ce said that he wanted to buy everything at 10 times the price. That was hundreds of thousands. A few 100,000 yuan was enough to open a decent supermarket in this era. More importantly, how could he be so rich? From Ce's clothes, No one could tell that he was rich. However, perhaps it was because of his strong aura that he had a natural kingly aura. Therefore, everyone believed that he could really afford to spend so much money. Moreover, the card CE threw out was real. This. The store owner, who was also the old man, was stunned. The store owner stood behind the cashier and was at a loss when he saw CE throw out the bank card and what he said. As for Mu Lanhua and Wei Jin, they were standing there in a daze. Mu Lanhua's heart was racing. She suppressed her disbelief and looked at CE as if she had seen a ghost. Could there really be so much money in the card? How could a person who could carry a bank card with hundreds of thousands of yuan on him be a simple person? But wasn't he wearing clothes from a street stall? Mu Lanhua couldn't understand. If CE was so rich, why would he dress so shabbily? At this moment, CE's magnetic voice was heard again. Oh right. There's 5 million USD in this card. Take the card. The password is 88s. You can go to the bank to verify it before you sell the items in the store to me. CE pretended to suddenly remember something. He stretched out his hand and brushed his hair with his slender fingers. Then, he spoke to the store owner leisurely. 5 million USD. Everyone almost fainted when they heard CE's words. There was 5 million USD in the card. 5 million USD was equivalent to 30 million RMB. 30 million RMB. A millionaire was usually the kind of person who was worth millions. In 1998, there were very few people who could become millionaires. But what about CE? He flung out his card and it was 30 million. What a frightening thing this was. You. Mu Lanhua was not stupid. She could tell that CE had slapped her hard in front of everyone. However, when CE said that he would buy the store at 10 times the original price, Mu Lanhua had already regretted treating him this way. Initially, she had spoken rudely to CE because he was dressed plainly and looked like a poor kid. However, CE's generosity made everyone believe that even if he was the son of one of the richest men in country Z, no one would doubt him. I'm fine. This store is mine now. I don't intend to sell the items to you, so you can leave. CE narrowed his eyes. He glanced at Mu Lanhua from the corner of his eyes. His handsome face revealed a trace of contempt. Don't forget to take your grandson with you. He added a reminder. To be honest, this 5 million USD card was the card that CE carried the least amount of cash on him. 5 million USD did not mean anything to him. After all, the assassins in Anhan would never accept a mission that was less than 5 million USD. Chapter 481. Mu Lanhua was a wealthy old lady. Her greatest pride was that she had a son who knew how to earn money. Therefore, Mu Lanhua was like a rich old lady, dressing herself up to the nines every day. At the same time, Mu Lanhua would also look down on those who were not rich. Of course, during this period, she didn't forget to make friends with those rich ladies. Mu Lanhua was not polite to Ce and Yunjian, but at this moment, she was speechless. Granny! It hurts. Wei Jin was still a child. He did not even have the concept of large amounts of money. Seeing that Mu Lanhua did not stand up for him like she usually did, Wei Jin placed his hands on his buttocks and cried at Mu Lanhua. The meaning of this was very obvious. Usually, Mu Lanhua would pluck the stars from the sky for him when she heard his cries. But today, Mu Lanhua was still indifferent when she heard his cries. Wei Jin was anxious. He wanted Mu Lanhua to stand up for him so badly. Hence, he reached out his short hand and tugged at Mu Lanhua's clothes. Granny, Jin is in pain. He pushed me. He just pushed me. Mu Lanhua had brought Wei Jin into the store to buy food. Wei Jin had stopped making a fuss. But when he saw Xiao Yunju making a funny face and smiling at him, Wei Jin got angry again. Jin, be good. Granny will bring you home. Mu Lanhua was speechless. She reached out and pulled Wei Jin out. No. Jin wants Granny to help Jin. I want to buy Hao Jia. I want to buy potato chips and Wang Zai. Or Jin won't go back. I won't go home. Wei Jin was pulled to the door by Mu Lanhua and started to make a fuss. Mu Lanhua was furious. She had lost all her face because of her grandson. But this was her grandson. Mu Lanhua squatted down and looked at Wei Jin. She said softly, Jin, let's go home. Granny will cook for you when we get home. CE had already bought the store and even ordered them to leave. Now, everyone outside was laughing at her. Mu Lanhua wanted to escape home as soon as possible. She did not want to expose herself in front of the crowd and be watched as if they were watching a show. However, Wei Jin was a child who had been spoiled since he was young. With Mu Lanhua's tug, Wei Jin became even more displeased. Wei Jin grabbed onto the doorframe and refused to let go. Wei Jin cried and shouted, "No, no! Granny, I want to eat, I want to eat! Buy it for me, buy it for me! Jin, listen to me!" Mu Lanhua bent down to pull Wei Jin. Wei Jin began to make threatening gestures and make threatening gestures. Crack! Wei Jin clawed at Mu Lanhua's face with her claws and fangs. Mu Lanhua could not help but scream in pain. In the next second, everyone saw a very deep fingernail mark on Mu Lanhua's cheek where Wei Jin's sharp nails had scratched. Fresh blood quickly flowed out from the fingernail imprint. There wasn't much blood. But after all, he had grabbed her cheeks. The face was the most important part of a woman. Even though Mu Lanhua was old, she still cherished her face. Mu Lanhua suddenly screamed in pain. She reached out and touched a pool of blood on her face caused by Wei Jin's scratch. Then, she pounced on Wei Jin like a madwoman. She muttered, "Granny dotes on you so much, but you're still acting like a granny. Do you have a conscience? Do you have a conscience?" Mu Lanhua doted on her grandson, but she loved herself more. Chapter 482. Mu Lanhua pounced on him. She was really punching and kicking her grandson. Everyone in town knew that Mu Lanhua loved her grandson dearly. However, no one knew that she loved her grandson more. If she had to choose between her grandson and herself, Mu Lanhua would definitely choose herself. What was the point of doting on her grandson? Wasn't it because she was afraid that no one would take care of her when she grew old? From Mu Lanhua's perspective, her granddaughter was most likely a good-for-nothing. After a woman got married, she was like spilled water that could not be taken back. Hence, Mu Lanhua gave her heart to Wei Jin. Her motive was obvious. She wanted her grandson to take care of her when she grew old and needed someone to take care of her for the rest of her life. Unfortunately, Wei Jin had just done something that Mu Lanhua couldn't accept. He had scratched her face. Mu Lanhua was dressed to the nines. She was already in her 50s and 60s, but she could still do this. It was obvious that she cared a lot about her appearance. That deep claw mark had scratched Mu Lanhua and also exhausted her last bit of patience. That was why she attacked her grandson Wei Jin and lost control of her emotions. Her face. Such a deep claw mark. Even if it could recover in the future, it would probably leave a scar. The surrounding people were dumbfounded when they saw Mu Lanhua, who usually doted on her grandson, pounce on Wei Jin and pinch him while scolding him. Mu Lanhua was hitting Wei Jin as hard as she usually doted on him. Wei Jin was so scared that his whole body was shaking like a sieve. He looked at his grandmother in horror. For the first time, he felt that this shrewish grandmother in front of him was not like the grandmother he used to know. In the end, the surrounding people could not stand it anymore and pulled Mu Lanhua away. Wei Jin was so scared that he curled up and did not say another word. In the end, Wei Jin's mother heard about the incident and rushed to the store to take Wei Jin and Mu Lanhua away. The farce ended, but it was not hard to see that after today, the topic of Mu Lanhua doting on her grandson would change. The shop owner, who had been silent all this while, held CE's bank card in his hand. He finally had a chance to speak and ask CE, "This card? Take the card. Go to the bank to verify it and get the money. Bring everything in the shop to this address." CE reached out and used his slender fingers to pick up a broken black pen by the cashier's counter. Then, he took a piece of white paper from the table and quickly wrote down an address before handing it to the shop owner. The shop owner was stunned. He took the card and frowned at CE. "Young man, aren't you afraid that I'll take all the money in this card if you tell me the password?" "Of course I trust you." CE smiled nonchalantly. The shop owner's heart warmed. He laughed loudly and accepted the card and address. Then he promised CE, "I, old Zhang, have been doing business for so many years and have never been greedy. Don't worry, I won't take a single cent of the extra money in the card. I'll send the item to you." "Okay." CE smiled. In the end, Xiao Yunzhu picked a few packets of Lay's potato chips for himself. He could not eat that much even if he played with them. Besides, CE had bought the entire store. In the future, Xiao Yunzhu would have everything he wanted. After Xiao Yunzhu bought the snacks, the three of them quickly returned to Zhang Meihua's house. On the way back, they saw that Wei Jin's front door was tightly shut. Needless to say, there was already a huge commotion going on. Chapter 483. The moment Yun Jian smiled sweetly, Ce caught sight of it. He smiled silently and raised his eyebrows. Yun Jian and Ce brought Xiao Yunzhu back to Zhang Meihua's house. Qin Yiru and Gu Junjian had already started chatting happily. When Yun Jian opened the door and walked in, Qin Yiru and Gu Junjian didn't feel anything was wrong. The conversation between Qin Yiru and Gu Junjian was akin to complaining about her years of suffering to the other party. Finally, the heavy burden in her heart was released. All these years, whether it was Qin Yiru or Gu Junjian, they had hidden their hearts in the deepest part of their hearts and didn't let others find out. But just now, the two of them had a heart-wrenching conversation. Since they were outsiders, it didn't matter even if they revealed everything. So Qin Yiru and Gu Junjian chatted happily. At this moment, Yun Jian, Ce, and Xiao Yunzhu returned. "You're back?" Qin Yiru asked when she saw Yun Jian and the other two walk in. "Yeah." Yun Jian nodded. At this moment, Xiao Yunzhu, who was standing between Yun Jian and Ce and holding their hands, was already a little drowsy. Xiao Yunzhu's eyes were almost closed into slits, but he still forced himself not to fall asleep. Xiao Yunzhu was still growing. Yun Jian let go of his hand and squatted down to look at him. She said to him, "Xiao Yunzhu, you should sleep. Big sister will accompany you to sleep first, okay?" At Xiao Yunzhu's age, most children would want to stay up until midnight and wait for the adults to give them red packets. Because it was very exciting to do this at that age. His eyelids were fighting, but Xiao Yunzhu still held them open and shook his head. Yun Jian couldn't help but caress Xiao Yunzhu's face as she said to him, "Xiao Yunzhu, go to sleep. When you wake up, you'll be able to wear new clothes and receive the red packet from brother Ce. If you don't sleep now, you won't get any red packets." Yun Jian said in an enticing tone. However, Yun Jian's guidance was indeed effective. "No, then Xiao Zhu will go to sleep." Xiao Yunzhu naughtily slipped away from Yun Jian and ran upstairs. "Xiao Zhu, be careful." Qin Yiru saw Xiao Yunzhu jumping up the stairs, so she went up to protect him. When Qin Yiru was at home, Xiao Yunzhu usually slept with her. Yun Jian breathed a sigh of relief at once. She suddenly felt that children weren't so easy to coax. If you wanted to coax him, you had to coax him to the point of a gun. Otherwise, he wouldn't listen to you. When Gu Junjian saw that only he, Yun Jian, and Ce were left downstairs, he instantly blushed and ran upstairs. He said that he was going to find Qin Yiru to ask where she was going to sleep. In a moment, only Yun Jian and Ce were left downstairs. Yun Jian only just realized this. She rolled her eyes and pursed her lips. "I'm going back to my room too." With that, Yun Jian walked up the stairs. Ce followed closely behind. The room that was prepared for Yun Jian was on the 3rd floor. It was only a wall away from Ce's room. Although there were many rooms in Zhang Meihua's house, it wasn't a villa. Every room here was connected by a wall. Yun Jian didn't plan to stay up late. At her age, it didn't make a difference whether she stayed up late or not. Standing in her room, Yun Jian looked at Ce, who was standing outside the door. She gestured to close the door and said to him, "Good night." With that, Yun Jian moved the door to close it. However, before she could push it, the door was suddenly blocked. In the next second, a tall figure flashed in and closed the door behind him. Chapter 484. By the time Ce said that, he had already squeezed his way in and closed the door. Yun Jian's face froze for a second before it was quickly covered by a flush of redness. "Get out!" Yun Jian shoved Ce, anger flashing in her beautiful eyes. Ce was like a statue, unable to budge no matter how hard Yun Jian pushed him. It was as if he was set on staying here. He was currently looking at Yun Jian with a pair of eyes that were as sharp as swords, but when his gaze landed on Yun Jian, his gaze softened. "Shoo!" Ce pressed his slender index finger to Yun Jian's lips, his handsome face becoming clearer. At this moment, the sound of footsteps suddenly came from outside the door, followed by a dong-dong-dong sound of knocking on the door. It was followed by Qin Yiru's call, "Xiao Jian, Do you know where AE went? He's not in his room? He was in her room. Yun Jian closed her eyes and pressed her lips together, not daring to say it out loud. What a joke. If she said that CE was in her room, what would her mother, Qin Yiru, think? Mom, he might have gone out, Yun Jian said from behind the door. The kid should have gone back. I saw that his car in the yard was driven away. Gu Yunjian's deep male voice came from outside the door. Yun Jian was speechless. She wanted to say that CE was in her room, so how could his car be driven away? However, if she told Qin Yiru who was outside the room, that child, he didn't even tell me he was leaving. Qin Yiru muttered to herself before shouting at Yun Jian who was inside the room. Xiao Jian, go to sleep first. I was planning to let AE and Officer Gus sleep together tonight, but since he's gone, forget it. Qin Yiru went away as she spoke. Yun Jian, however, was stunned. CE and Gu Junjian were supposed to stay together for the night, but now that things had come to this, looks like I'll have to sleep here tonight. CE shrugged, leaning against the wall with his slender body leaning against it. There was a hint of fake helplessness in his tone. Unless you want your mom to know that I'm here. CE smirked and stared straight at Yun Jian. Yun Jian understood right away. She gritted her teeth and glared at CE. When did you drive the car away? Adam's here too. CE leaned against the wall and moved away from it, his long legs striding toward Yun Jian with an arrogant gait. Adam was here too, but he was only here to drive the Lamborghini away for him. Yun Jian felt like she had been tricked. She gritted her teeth and bit her lip at CE. Do whatever you want. She did not care anymore. With that, Yun Jian ran to the bed, pulled the blanket and rolled over to close her eyes. However, Yun Jian's action looked like she was acting coquettishly in CE's eyes. He smirked. With her eyes closed, Yun Jian could feel CE's gaze sizing her up. The night was quiet. Suddenly, CE's presence vanished completely. Chapter 485. Yun Jian suddenly reacted. At the same time, she flipped over and bent her legs slightly, wanting to kick him off the bed. However, just as she stretched her leg out from under the blanket, CE easily pinned it down with his leg. You! Yun Jian opened her mouth. She moved her lips slightly. Sleep. CE laid on his side and looked at her. He smirked, his handsome face filled with evil. After speaking, he pinned her leg down with one hand and turned on the bedside lamp with the other. The lamp was switched off, and the surroundings were pitch black. Before the lamp was switched off, Yun Jian was still in that embarrassing position. However, at this moment, she stopped moving. Fortunately, the surroundings were pitch black. Apart from the faint scent of CE, who was extremely close to her, she couldn't feel anything else. The words that came out of his mouth seemed to have magical powers. Yun Jian immediately quieted down. Subconsciously moved, Yun Jian nodded obediently in the dark. However, just as Yun Jian nodded obediently, a strong force pulled her over. She felt CE, who was beside her, suddenly pull her to him with a different hand. In the next second, CE's scent thickened. He pulled her into his embrace. However, other than that, he didn't do anything else. After a while, Yun Jian, who was buried in CE's chest, heard his muffled voice again. Sleep. Okay. Yun Jian was enticed and didn't resist. She suddenly felt that lying in CE's chest was very warm. After that, CE didn't move for a long time. He was waiting for her to fall asleep. However, Yun Jian was in a deep sleep. In both her previous and current lives, Yun Jian was always vigilant. In the past, when she slept, Yun Jian never dared to sleep deeply. Sleeping too deeply was a taboo for secret agents. This was what Lin Wei, an Hun's instructor who trained Yun Jian, had said. As a special agent, no one could guarantee that the people around them wouldn't stab them to death. There was also no guarantee that there would not be an assassination attempt in the middle of the night. Therefore, even the slightest movement could wake Yun Jian up. This had even become her habit. It had never changed. However, that night was the deepest sleep Yun Jian had ever had in both her previous and current lives. It seemed that other than when she was kidnapped by the organization in her previous life, it had been a long time since she had slept so recklessly. The next day, CE didn't move at all and let Yun Jian snuggle up to her for the night. After he got up, He carefully protected Yunjian as if she was a priceless treasure and slowly placed her upright. After confirming that he didn't wake her up, he opened the door and walked out of the room. After she left, she gently closed the door behind her. Huh. You didn't leave. Just as Ce walked out of Yunjian's room, a surprised exclamation came from behind him. Ce turned around and saw Yunyi's shocked face. Ce nodded. Did that mean that he slept in the same room as his sister last night? Yunyi's lips twitched, feeling like the sister she had protected since she was young had been snatched away. However, it was Ce who had snatched her sister away, so it was fine. Qin Yiru, who had gone to the market to buy groceries early in the morning, was surprised to see Ce standing there. Ae, you didn't leave? Where did you go yesterday? She thought that Ce had already left in his car. Chapter 486. Qin Yiru nodded, not suspecting anything as she asked, Is Xiao Jian awake? No. Ce answered before Yun-Yi could say anything. How do you know? Qin Yiru almost blurted out the question. Ce slept with Yun-Yi. How could he be so sure that Xiao Jian was not awake? Moreover, Yun-Jian never lazed in bed. In the past, Yun-Jian would wake up early in the morning for a morning run. Now, it was almost noon and she was still in bed. Qin Yiru was not dumb. She found it odd as well. Cough, we knocked just now but no one answered. Xiao Jian should still be sleeping. Yun-Yi quickly tried to smooth things over. Qin Yiru stopped asking once she heard Yun-Yi's words. Qin Yiru would not think too much about it. She nodded and went to the kitchen with a bag of groceries she bought from the market. Before she left, she told Yun-Yi and Ce, Xiao Jian, go see Xiao Jian if she's awake. If Xiao Jian wakes up, let her go to Fian's house. Fian came looking for Xiao Jian early in the morning, but Xiao Jian wasn't awake yet, Qin Yiru said and left. The first day of the Lunar New Year was a day for relatives and friends to visit. It was just that Zhang Meihua was an elder while Qin Yiru was already divorced and staying at her parents' home. Therefore, many relatives would visit Zhang Meihua's home on the first day of the Lunar New Year. Usually, the elderly would be the ones to sit and wait. As for Qin Liqian and his family, they had already woken up early to visit their relatives and friends. Since Qin Yiru was divorced, she had cut ties with her ex-husband, Yun Gang's relatives as well. It was not good to be a freeloader at Zhang Meihua's house, so Qin Yiru woke up early to help Zhang Meihua. As Qin Yiru busied herself, even Gu Junjian, who had woken up early in the morning to train, helped her with a lot of work. 11 o'clock in the afternoon. Yunjian's sleeping eyes finally opened. When she woke up, she felt dizzy for a while, but then she returned to normal. This time, she really slept like a log. She opened the door and went downstairs. Lunch was already prepared. Haha, Yunjian, if you don't want to join the army, why are you lazing around in bed on the first day of the new year? Hee, come quickly, your mom has already prepared lunch. We can start eating after you. Gu Junjian said energetically. Yunjian narrowed her eyes. She saw Ce sitting next to her brother, Yun-Yi, and walked over. In fact, before Yunjian woke up, many relatives had already come to visit her. At this time, a few relatives stayed behind to eat lunch with everyone. After Yunjian finished lunch, she heard that Lu Fian came to her house to look for her. She knew that she had slept too deeply last night. This was probably the first time he woke up so late. So, she packed up and ran to find Lu Fian. Of course, Ce had followed her all the way. When Yunjian arrived at Lu Fian's house, she saw the latter standing with a group of friends. Xiao Jian! Lu Fian called out excitedly the moment she saw Yunjian. Yunjian went over with a press of lips. The group standing beside Lu Fian noticed Yunjian as well. Yunjian! Haha, it's really you. Standing in front of Lu Fian was Li Xiangyi and others from Xinjiang Town's high school basketball team. When she had just been reborn, Li Xiangyi and the rest were considered Yunjian's first batch of friends. When they parted, they had promised to meet up in Longmen City after they got into high school together. When Yunjian came back to Xinjiang Town to visit Lu Fian, Li Xiangyi and the rest had come to look for Yunjian when they heard the news. However, they missed the opportunity. Chapter 487. You guys are here too? Yun Jian raised her brow and asked the basketball team members whom she had not seen for a long time. Today was the first day of the Lunar New Year. Usually, students would follow their parents to visit their relatives and get free meals. Yun Jian was surprised that Li Xiangyi and the rest did not go out to visit. Heh, isn't that so? We're staying at home to see you. Yun Jian, do you know how difficult it is for us to see you? You didn't even tell us when you came back the last time, causing us to make a trip to Lu Fian's house for nothing. Li Xiangyi was visibly agitated as he spoke passionately, looking at Yun Jian. Even Ce, who stood out beside Yun Jian, was mercilessly ignored. In spite of it, Ce did not show any dissatisfaction. He could see that Li Xiangyi and the rest of the basketball team only had admiration for Yun Jian. Hee, last time when we heard that you were back, we rushed to Lu Fian's house as fast as we could. In the end, we didn't expect that you would just leave. Wu Kuei was also quite happy. He stood beside Li Xiangyi and helped to speak up. It looked like the basketball team was thrilled to see Yun Jian again. Xiao Jian, the incident last time has been resolved. My dad injured someone by accident and paid compensation with the female teacher. He's out of the police station now. Lu Fian went to Yun Jian and told her about the incident last time when everyone was done talking. Her father would not go to jail as long as he was forgiven by the other party. Killing by accident and killing on purpose were different in the eyes of the law. Even if he had to go to jail, it would not be more than a few months. In spite of it, compensation was a given. The compensation to the victim's family was not small either. Now that the female teacher who bumped into Lu Fian's father was paying the compensation as well, the pressure on the Lu family was not as great as before. This was the best outcome that Lu Fian and her mother could imagine. Xiao Jian, my mom told me today that I have to invite you to my house for dinner no matter what. Lu Fian invited Jian Yiling after that. Mother Lu's gratitude naturally could not be described with words. Yun Jian did not argue and immediately nodded. Okay. Since Mother Lu was grateful to her, she would naturally accept it. Lu Fian grinned. Xiao Jian, thank you so much for last time. Aya, who are we now? There's no need to thank me. Li Xiangyi smiled kindly, instantly alleviating the awkwardness. It was only then that Li Xiangyi noticed Ce, who was standing beside Yun Jian. Li Xiangyi's thick eyebrows moved up and down. He walked over to Ce and asked Yun Jian, Yo, who is this? Yun Jian, are you enlightened? You even brought a man back? As Li Xiangyi spoke, he studied Ce from head to toe. Yeah, Xiao Jian, who's he? Lu Fian asked at the same time when she noticed Ce, who had been quiet all this while. Thus, the group quickly turned their attention to Ce. They would not have known if they did not look, but once they did, they held their breaths. Ce was handsome, and it would not be an exaggeration to say that his looks could make the world lose its color. Even Li Xiangyi and his friends who were also men could not help taking a closer look at Ce. Her man. Before Yun Jian could say anything, Ce summed it up with 3 words that were rather infuriating. Whose man? Yun Jian's man. Chapter 488. Just as Ce said that, Yun Jian gave him a little push. Yun Jian looked at the group with a smile, the sweetness on her lips unmistakable. Heh. With one glance, Lu Fian knew that Yun Jian and Ce were definitely up to something. Thus, Lu Fian moved closer to Yun Jian and asked with a grin, Xiao Jian, what happened to you when I wasn't around? Her Xiao Jian had found a man behind her back. Yun Jian glanced at Lu Fian from the corner of her eyes and blinked. After a moment, she smirked and flicked Lu Fian's forehead softly under everyone's expectant gaze. Take a guess. Lu Fian was dumbfounded before she pouted. Before Lu Fian could say anything, however, Li Xiangyi's voice rang. All right, let's take a stroll in town now, heh. Although they were going for a stroll, Li Xiangyi actually wanted to bring Yun Jian to Xinjiang Town's basketball court and ask her to teach more basketball skills to his team while Yun Jian was still around. It was not hard to tell that Li Xiangyi and his group were basketball fans. Yun Jian saw through Li Xiangyi's intention as well. She looked down, as if afraid that Lu Fian would continue asking her about what she said just now. She quickly answered, let's go. After saying that, she lifted her leg and walked forward. Ce caught up when she saw her moving forward, maintaining her position beside Yun Jian. Heh, they're up to something. Lu Fian snickered at Li Xiangyi and ran after Yun Jian. Li Xiangyi and the others scratched their heads, and in the end, they seemed to have figured it out. They followed the direction that Yun Jian and Ce went. Li Xiangyi even ran to the front to lead the way. In the end, Li Xiangyi led the group to the only outdoor gym in Xinjiang town. The only outdoor gym in Xinjiang town was set up near the town's government building. In addition, there was a special basketball court here, which was built for people who loved playing basketball and exercising. The investment fund here was provided by the government as well. Come, Yun Jian, I haven't seen you play basketball in a long time. Demonstrate for us. Li Xiangyi fished out a basketball from his bulging bag and passed it to Yun Jian. There were already many people running and shooting hoops on the basketball court. Girls' screams could be heard from time to time. There were no basketball hoops left for Li Xiangyi and the others to play basketball. There were only 4 hoops on the court, but from where they were from the side, the 4 hoops seemed to be occupied by members of a team. That was because there wasn't a basketball match going on over there. Instead, it was a group of gangsters with tattoos all over their bodies randomly shooting basketballs. Seeing this, Captain Wen Rue greeted Yun Jian and the others and went over. He wanted to negotiate with that group of people to see if they could let him take out a basketball rack. On the other hand, Yun Jian and the others waited where they were. Xiao Jian? An incredulous male voice came from behind her. Yun Jian turned around beside Ce and her gaze sharpened when she saw who it was. The person standing in front of her was holding a basketball with one hand and had his jacket slung over his shoulder to show off in front of the girls. He was Yuan Yingjun, whom she had not seen for a long time. He was also the indirect culprit of the original owner's death. Yuan Yingjun was thrilled when he saw Yun Jian. Chapter 489. Before Yun Jian left Xinjiang town, Yuan Yingjun and Lin Mingyu were the perfect couple in Xinjiang Town High School. They were the envy of many boys and girls in the school. Yuan Yingjun got together with Lin Mingyu only because her father was the principal of Xinjiang Town High School. Actually, the person Yuan Yingjun really liked was Yun Jian. His original plan was to date Lin Mingyu while he secretly maintained a relationship with Yun Jian. Yuan Yingjun also had a good plan. He wanted to use Lin Mingyu to make his life smooth, and when he graduated and had a stable career, he would dump Lin Mingyu. By then, he could officially be together with Yun Jian. However, Yuan Yingjun did not consider whether the original Yun Jian liked him or not. In Yuan Yingjun's mind, all girls would like his type. However, before Yuan Yingjun could do that, Yun Jian changed. She was no longer the same person as before. Even so, Yuan Yingjun only thought that Yun Jian was playing hard to get with him. He was Xinjiang Town High School's most handsome boy. He was the most outstanding boy in the school. How could Yun Jian not like him? Until Yun Jian ignored him again and again, which made Yuan Yingjun afraid. He even narcissistically thought that after he broke up with Lin Mingyu, Yun Jian would forgive him. In the end, Yuan Yingjun failed to beg for forgiveness and had an idea. He originally planned to take Yun Jian for himself. If a girl's most important chastity was taken away by him, wouldn't Yun Jian be in the palm of his hand? However, before Yuan Yingjun could carry out his plan, Yun Jian transferred schools completely. After that, Yuan Yingjun did ask people to look for her, but Yun Jian seemed to have disappeared. Since Yuan Yingjun could not leave Xinjiang town, he could only give up. He continued to be Xinjiang Town High School's most handsome boy and enjoyed the adoration of girls. However, when he thought of Yun Jian's stunning and exquisite appearance, which he had never gotten his hands on, Yuan Yingjun felt that the girls around him instantly lost their interest. Today, Yuan Yingjun and his friends had agreed to come to the basketball court to play basketball and show off in front of the girls. However, as soon as he arrived, he saw the person he had been thinking about day and night. Thus, Yuan Yingjun abandoned his friends and rushed towards Yun Jian. Yun Jian looked up at the voice and frowned subtly when she saw Yuan Yingjun looking at her with excitement. "Who are you?" Yun Jian looked up at Yuan Yingjun and asked casually. It wasn't that she had forgotten about Yuan Yingjun, but that she didn't want to have anything to do with him. Xiao Jian? You don't recognize me?" Yuan Yingjun acted as if he was hurt. He stared at Yun Jian with wide eyes, sizing up Yun Jian without hesitation. "Who's Xiao Jian?" "I'm sorry. Please call me Yun Jian." Yun Jian glared at Yuan Yingjun. The resolute attitude she displayed when she spoke could be understood even if the people around them were dumb. Haha, Ingjun, looks like there are girls who don't like you too. A short boy standing beside Yuan Ingjun teased. Yuan Ingjun was someone who cared about his reputation. His temper flared when he heard what the boy said. Reaching out, Yuan Ingjun was going to grab Yun Jian's hand. Xiao Jian, stop fooling around. Where have you been these days? I've been thinking about. Before his hand could touch the corner of Yun Jian's shirt, a pair of large palms strangled his wrist, grabbing his hand that was about to land on Yun Jian's hand. Chapter 490. The people around them froze when they heard Si Yi's domineering declaration. It was not because of anything else but Si Yi's overwhelming aura. Some people were born with the aura of a king. There was no doubt that Si Yi was such a person. He was born as the young master of an armaments family. Later on, his forces were even more powerful to a frightening extent. Si Yi was already 20 years old when the Lunar New Year had just passed. He was still young at 20 years old, but his status was incomparable to others. In spite of it, the shock of the bystanders paled in comparison to Yuan Ingjuan's fear. Yes, it was fear. Si Yi's strong grip on Yuan Ingjuan's wrist was so strong that it made Yuan Ingjun frown. Waves of pain came from his wrist, causing Yuan Ingjun to make a panicked expression. Yuan Ingjun swung his hand twice, shaking off Si Yi's hand that was strangling his wrist. He sucked in a breath of pain and glared at Si Yi, growling. Who am I? I'd like to ask you who you are. In fact, Si Yi did not want to continue gripping Yuan Ingjuan's wrist. It was because it was dirty. However, Yuan Ingjun thought that he had broken free from Si Yi. He had not looked carefully just now. He only saw Yun Jian and did not see Si Yi, who was standing beside Yun Jian in his excitement. Since when was there a man standing beside his Xiao Jian? Yuan Ingjuan's gaze turned hostile at once. His gaze on Si Yi was provocative, so Yuan Ingjun lifted his head lightly. He had his brothers here to help him. Moreover, his brothers were all experts in fighting. Si Yi's deep gaze merely glared at Yuan Ingjun, ignoring the provocation in his gaze. He suddenly grabbed Yun Jian's wrist and turned to leave. Aren't we playing basketball anymore? Li Xiangyi asked dumbly from the side. Are you dumb? Who's going to play your stupid basketball in this situation? Lu Fian gestured at Li Xiangyi from beside him before she turned and ran toward Yun Jian and Si Yi. Before Yuan Ingjun and his brothers came over to stop Yun Jian from leaving, however, a furious roar came from the basketball court. Kid, I'm playing basketball here. Do you think I'll give you a basketball rack just because you asked? How embarrassing would that be? Yun Jian had been dragged 2 steps by Si Yi. When she heard the roar, she tugged at Si Yi, signaling him to stop. Yun Jian turned to look at the basketball court without looking at Yuan Ingjun and his men, who looked sullen. On the basketball court, Wen Rue, who had just run over to negotiate with those fierce-looking gangsters with tattoos all over their bodies who had snatched away all the basketball hoops on the basketball court, was being roared at by a fierce-looking gangster with his finger pointed at the bridge of his nose. Wen Rue was the captain of Li Xiangyi's basketball team. When he saw that the 4 basketball games on the court were all occupied by this group of hooligans, he wanted to negotiate and see if he could give up a spot for them. Who knew that the gangster would immediately yell at him when he heard him? His voice was so loud that even the people standing at the edge of the basketball court could hear him. When the gangster yelled, the gangsters beside him all came over and glared at Wen Rue fiercely. Yuan Ingjun took one look and knew that Wen Rue was with Yun Jian. He was shocked, but in order to get a good impression from Yun Jian, he walked toward Yun Jian. He stood 1 meter in front of Yun Jian and glared at Si Yi fiercely. Then he turned to Yun Jian and said. Chapter 491. The hooligan who pointed at Wen Rue's nose and yelled was in his early 20s. Everyone called him Brother Ho, and the hooligans around him were cautious around him. The reason was simple. Brother Ho's father was an elder of Falcon Hall. That was an elder of Falcon Hall. Falcon Hall was now the 2nd largest gang in Jia Province. Not long ago, Falcon Hall had destroyed the 2nd largest gang in Jia Province, Flying Passage, and replaced it. Such a powerful gang was rare even in the country. That was why Falcon Hall's reputation had spread far and wide. Even a person like Yuan Ingjun would be scared out of his wits and retreat 3 feet back. Moreover, Brother Ho was the son of an elder of Falcon Hall. His status was extraordinary. Yuan Yingjun came to tell Yun Jian this because he wanted Yun Jian to have a better impression of him. He had already taken such a risk to tell her about this. Moreover, if Yuan Yingjun had not come to tell Yun Jian to get Wen Rui back quickly and not go against Brother Ho, the consequences would have been unimaginable. Instantly, Yuan Yingjun felt that Ce, who was 7 to 8 centimeters taller than him and was several times more handsome than Yun Jian, looked like a gigolo. How could he be compared to him? Yuan Yingjun had risked Brother Ho to hear such important news and told Yun Jian about it. Brother Ho was a vengeful person. If Brother Ho heard Yuan Yingjun talking behind his back, Yuan Yingjun would not have an easy time. Falcon Hall was a gang that Yuan Yingjun and the others could only look at but would never dare to come into contact with in their lifetime. Therefore, for Yuan Yingjun and the others, if they encountered a character like Ho Gu, they would never dare to go against him. Falcon Hall. Yun Jian turned to look at Yuan Yingjun when she heard the name, but her hand was still held by Ce. Yuan Yingjun saw that Yun Jian had turned to look at him. He nodded like a chick pecking at rice and continued, "It's that Falcon Hall. The one who annihilated Flying Passage, the second largest gang in Jia province not long ago. He's very powerful. We can't afford to offend him." As Yuan Yingjun spoke, he looked at Ce provocatively. What Yuan Yingjun wanted to express was very simple. He only thought that Ce was a gigolo. Wasn't he just a little more handsome, a little fairer, and a little taller than her 1.77 meters? Heh, could he be more knowledgeable than himself? These matters of the black market were not something that ordinary people could easily find out from any channel. Even Yuan Yingjun had to make friends with all sorts of people and use all sorts of channels to find out this information. Oh! Yun Jian curled her lips. Her beautiful eyes moved, and she lowered her face. Yun Jian's appearance stunned Yuan Yingjun. The girl lowered her head, her hair tied in a high ponytail at the back of her head. Her slightly pursed lips and alluring beauty made everyone present feel suffocated. However, before everyone could take a good look at the girl's figure, a slender hand reached out and pulled the girl's petite body into an embrace. Yun Jian was pulled into Ce's embrace without a word. His woman was not someone that others could spy on just because they wanted to. Even if it was her every move, he was not allowed to. Chapter 492. Where Ho Gu pointed, he even skipped Yuan Yingjun and the others. Yuan Yingjun and the others were shocked. Oh no! Ho Gu must have thought that they were in cahoots with Wen Rui. Then wouldn't they be done for? Yuan Yingjun, you've gotten us into trouble. The short boy standing next to Yuan Yingjun yelled at him in fear. His tone was full of resentment. Don't blame me, Yuan Yingjun said hastily in shock. Just as he spoke, however, he regretted it. Didn't he just say what was in his heart? Was he not blaming Yun Jian's people for provoking Ho Gu and getting dragged into this because he was talking to Yun Jian just now? She did not care about anything else, but if Yun Jian misunderstood and blamed her, would she not have a chance anymore? Xiao Jian Yuan Yingjun wanted to explain. Shut up. Before he could finish, he was intimidated by Yun Jian's growl. Yun Jian's sharp gaze swept toward Yuan Yingjun. The latter was startled by Yun Jian's glare. He could not help recalling the scene of Yun Jian strangling a cobra to death with a single hand and her frighteningly nimble movements. Yuan Yingjun shuddered. By then, Ho Gu and his men had already captured Wen Rui and surrounded Yun Jian and the others. At the same time, Ho Gu strutted over. Ho Gu and his men were tattooed on all the exposed parts of their bodies and each of them looked majestic. They jogged over and surrounded Yun Jian and the others. It was like a gang fight in the movies. Yuan Yingjun was dumbfounded. He swallowed the saliva of both of them. If someone were to look carefully, they would probably be able to see that Yuan Yingjun's pair of relatively long and thin legs were shivering in a subtle posture. His legs were like springs, trembling here and there. Hee hee, I heard that you guys want to snatch the basketball hoop from me? Ho Gu, who was wearing a black tattered shirt and trousers, was a person who dressed differently in this era. At this time, Ho Gu was swaggering towards Yun Jian and the others. Wen Rui was already under control. No. Brother Ho, we're not trying to steal your basketball hoop. We're not on the same side as them. The short boy on Yuan Yingjun's side explained to Ho Gu in fear. Shut up. Ho Gu narrowed his eyes and looked at Yun Jian, then at Lu Fian. After a while, He turned to the short boy beside Yuan Jun and growled. The short boy was so scared that his whole body trembled. He really shut his mouth. Two beauties. Do you want to play basketball? After Gu saw Yun Jian and Lu Fian clearly, his eyes gradually turned from hostility to lust. Why were Ji's group playing basketball on the field? Their goal was similar to Yuan Jun's group. They didn't really want to play basketball, they just wanted to act cool in front of the girls. Yun Jian and Lu Fian didn't even look at Gu. Gu clicked his tongue and became even more excited. Chapter 493. Yuan Jun made it sound like he and Yun Jian were a couple and Ce was just an insignificant person. What did he mean by asking his woman to accompany this Gu? Ce frowned, his sharp gaze fixed on Yuan Jun's face. Before Yun Jian could reply to Yuan Jun and before Ce could make a move, Lu Fian spoke to Yuan Jun on behalf of Yun Jian angrily. Bah! Shameless, you scumbag. Don't compare my Xiao Jian to you. You don't deserve it. Lu Fian had always been on Yun Jian's side. Lu Fian's words made Yuan Jun very dissatisfied. He looked at Lu Fian with disgust and even retorted, Who do you think you are? I'm asking Xiao Jian to accompany him. Not you. You. As he spoke, Gu was already looking at Yun Jian with a gaze that said he was sure he could get it. His gaze roamed over Yun Jian blatantly, making one's hair stand on end just by looking at his heated gaze. Before Gu could finish persuading Yun Jian with Yuan Jun, Ce's voice rang harshly again. Don't let me hear you slander her again and you'll die. Yuan Jun and Gu shuddered when they heard the voice and slowly turned their gazes to Ce. The moment they saw Ce clearly, they were both stunned. Then, the emotions of shock, fear, terror, and horror overwhelmed him. A pistol had appeared in Ce's hand out of nowhere. The silver pistol looked classy and classy. Ce's slender hand gripped the gun, his finger curling slightly as it hooked onto the trigger. The muzzle of the gun was pointed at Yuan Jun's head. Gun. 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 Ce had a real gun. When Yuan Jun and his men realized what was going on, they were scared out of their wits at the same time. Ce looked like he was in his 20s, but he had a gun. It was something that even regular triads could not get their hands on. Coupled with what Ce had said just now, Yuan Jun and his men were all stunned. Yuan Jun and his men were certain that if they dared utter another word of contempt toward Yun Jian, the gun in Ce's hand would shoot Yuan Jun's head without hesitation. Yuan Jun's jaw dropped, but he could not utter a single word. At this moment, even Gu was so scared that he stopped breathing. The reason why Gu was so powerful in this generation was because his father was an elder of Falcon Hall. But even if his father was an elder of Falcon Hall, he did not have a gun. Compared to these men, Lu Fian, Li Xiangyi, and the others were terrified as well. They did not expect Ce to have a gun. This was smuggling firearms. Before Ce could do anything, a plop was heard. Everyone was stunned again as Yuan Jun, who was full of confidence earlier, suddenly knelt down in front of Ce. Don't kill me. I was wrong. I'll give Yun Jian back to you. She's yours. I don't want her anymore. No, don't kill me. Yuan Jun looked at the gun in Ce's hand in horror as he knelt down and begged Ce for mercy. In Yuan Jun's mind, beauties were important. However, how could they be more important than his own life? Moreover, he only wanted to play with Yun Jian. He planned to throw her away once he got tired of her. Chapter 494. I'll say this again. There's nothing between you and me. There's no such thing as returning the favor. If you spout nonsense again in the future, this will be your end. Before Yuan Jun could finish, Yun Jian snatched the gun from Ce's hand. Ce allowed her to snatch the gun from his hand. After Yun Jian finished speaking, she pulled the trigger with her index finger and shot Yuan Jun, who was kneeling on the ground. Tiske. Because it was a silencer, there was no need to worry about the loud noise that would attract attention. Oh! Yuan Jun, a grown man, was so frightened by Yun Jian's sudden attack that he shrieked in pain. He never thought that Yun Jian would snatch Ce's gun and shoot at him. Gu and the others who were standing at the side shivered violently. She actually dared to shoot. At that moment, the bullet fired from the silencer grazed past Yuan Jun's head with a distance of 0.1 centimeters. Gotcha! The sound of metal being pierced was heard. Everyone turned around to look. Next to the concrete floor of the basketball court, there was a small hole in the pile of ordinary steel fences that had been shot by the bullet just now. The hole that had been shot through was still filled with a wisp of smoke from the gunpowder. Everyone couldn't help but gulp at this scene. If the bullet hadn't brushed past Yuan Ingjuan's head, but had instead pierced right through his head. Everyone's hearts couldn't help but tremble at the thought of this. Ah! Yuan Ingjun shrieked. The school hunk aura that he put on in the past completely disintegrated at this moment. Even the people who came with Yuan Ingjun were shocked by Yuan Ingjuan's cowardice. Yun Jian never thought of shooting Yuan Ingjun to death. It was the first day of the new year and she didn't want to become a well-known figure so soon. However, Yun Jian didn't return Si Yi's gun to him. She turned her head slightly to look at Si Yi and saw that he was looking at her with a gentle gaze. His gaze seemed to say that no matter what she did, he would stand behind her and support her unconditionally. Yun Jian pursed her lips and suddenly felt that she had nothing else to worry about. Suddenly, Yun Jian turned her sharp eyes to Ho Gu. Her sharp eyes were also sizing up Ho Gu. Ho Gu trembled under his stare. Why are you looking at me like that? If Ho Gu looked at Yun Jian as if she was a beauty at the beginning, then at this time, it was completely different. She even fired a gun just like that. This woman was too terrifying. Your father is an elder of Falcon Hall? What's his name? Yun Jian tilted her head and looked at Ho Gu in a perverse manner. This question made Brother Ho shudder. What do you want? Ho Gu was a little hesitant and didn't say it out loud. Nothing. Yun Jian twirled the gun in her hand. It seems like you want to have a taste of my gun too? Yun Jian threatened as she held the gun in her hand. This scene made Brother Ho's heart skip a beat. Ho Gu immediately shouted, Duan Lei, my father is Duan Lei. It's him? Hearing this name, Yun Jian narrowed her eyes and asked. Ho Gu was actually Duan Lei's son? And Duan Lei was also Su Zetian's subordinate. He even had some dealings with Yun Jian. Who would have thought that Duan Lei, an honest man, would have such an unkind child? You know my father? Ho Gu panicked when Yun Jian acted as if she knew his father. He had done so many bad things. If his father found out, he would definitely kill him. Then who are you? Ho Gu mustered up his courage and asked. Chapter 495. Yun Jian. Ho Gu murmured. His instincts told him that she was not simple. How could a woman who could shoot people with a gun be simple? Ho Gu was in Xinjiang town today because his hometown was in the countryside of Xinjiang town. It was Chinese New Year now, so his father had brought him back to his hometown. Since this woman named Yun Jian dared to ask his father who she was, she must have some tricks up her sleeves. Ho Gu had already retracted his gaze towards Yun Jian, who dared to shoot at him. Let's go. Ho Gu waved his hand, gesturing for his brothers to follow him. Ho Ji's brothers listened to Ho Ji's order, and immediately turned to leave. Did I say that you can leave? Ho Gu and the others had just turned when Si Yi's magnetic voice came from behind them. Yun Jian had kept quiet after finding out that Ho Gu was Duan Lei's son. Based on Ho Ji's personality, he would definitely not be able to resist asking Duan Lei who she was. Ho Gu would probably still be in trouble when Duan Lei found out what had happened. However, before Yun Jian could speak, Si Yi spoke. You dare to slander my woman, and you still want to leave? Si Yi's hoarse but slightly threatening male voice made Ho Gu and the others, who had already turned to leave, tremble again. Si Yi's existence was even more mysterious compared to Yun Jian, who had shot at him directly. After all, that gun had been taken from Si Yi's hands. It was true that Si Yi had aimed the gun at Yuan Ingjun initially. However, the fact that he could take out a gun proved one point. Even Ho Ji's father, Duan Lei, who was in Falcon Hall's underworld and was now an elder, did not have the right to carry a gun at all times. However, Si Yi had a gun. This proved one point. He was definitely more powerful than his father. Ho Gu had made it to this point, so he still had this bit of insight. He trembled as he looked at Si Yi. In the end, he swallowed hard and changed his previous arrogance. He lowered his head to look at Si Yi and asked, Do you have any other orders? The son of an elder in Falcon Hall actually lowered his head to Yun Jian and Si Yi. Aura. This was the power of a person's aura. Yuan Ingjun had already recovered from his shock. However, he was still unable to calm down. Let him go. Yun Jian reached out to touch Siyi's hand as she spoke to Ce. Yun Jian's words to Ce were the most effective. No one could stop Ce from doing what he wanted to do. If Adam and Mo were here, they would have been shocked. Because Ce's father's Yun Jian and Yun Jian's as a group. When had the leader of the Anhun organization ever been so overcautious when killing people? When did they not kill directly? Okay. Ce looked at Yun Jian with his gentle eyes and nodded. Whatever you say. Yun Jian curled her lips and gave Ce a mesmerizing smile. Her red lips moved up and down like a delicious dessert, seductive. When Ho Gu and the others heard that Yun Jian was willing to let them go, they all ran away in an instant. Yuan Ingjun, on the other hand, was paralyzed on the ground, trembling all over. He couldn't accept this. But Ce suddenly reached out with his slender fingers and cupped Yun Jian's small face. Following the allure of her red lips, he leaned in and kissed her. When Yun Jian came back to her senses, she felt Ce's face magnify. In the end, he pecked Yun Jian's red lips in front of Yuan Ingjun. Chapter 496. Yuan Ingjun watched as Ce kissed the soft lips that he had thought about countless times but never had the chance to do so in front of him. He was instantly devastated. However, no matter how devastated Yuan Ingjun was, he did not dare to move at all. Ce was too mysterious and Yun Jian was too scary. Yun Jian's bullet had brushed past his head. At that time, Yuan Ingjun felt that he was only one step away from death. Just one step and he would be dead. Dead. Yuan Ingjun was also a normal person. Of course, he was afraid of death. Moreover, he was still young and in his prime. How could he die like this? Therefore, Yuan Ingjun was trembling on the ground and did not dare to move at all. He was afraid that if he moved, Yun Jian would raise her gun and shoot at him again. Therefore, he watched as Ce held Yun Jian's delicate face and tossed and turned in bed. He was furious but did not dare to say anything. However, Yuan Ingjun's cowardice was seen by his group of friends. Yuan Ingjun was actually a famous person in Xinjiang Town High School. After all, he was the school hunk of Xinjiang Town High School. Among Yuan Ingjun's group of friends, there were a few who were not very kind. They usually had opinions about Yuan Ingjun. After all, no one wanted to see someone better than them. For example, the short boy from before. Yuan Ingjun was considered an outstanding person in Xinjiang Town High School. Of course, Yuan Ingjun could not be compared to Ce. Even so, Yuan Ingjun was still considered handsome and was highly sought after by the girls. Therefore, the short boy actually hated Yuan Ingjun from the bottom of his heart. He was jealous, but he did not say it out loud. It wasn't hard to imagine how Yuan Ingjun's friends, who had long disliked him, would slander him when he returned to school in the future if they saw his cowardly appearance. Of course, for now, Yuan Ingjun had already lost all his face. On the other end, Ho Gu brought a group of people back home as if they were escaping. Ho Ji's real name was Duan Ho, Duan Lei's eldest son. Other than that, Duan Lei also had a younger daughter. Duan Lei's family used to live in the city center of Longmen City, but the two elders were unwilling to leave Xinjiang Town to live with him in Longmen City. Therefore, during the new year, Duan Lei brought his wife and children back to Xinjiang Town. Seeing his son, Duan Ho, running back with a group of people, Duan Lei, who was sitting in his own courtyard, stood up. He, big brother is flying. Brother is flying back. Duan Ho's 3-year-old little sister had braids on her head. She waved her hands and smiled happily when she saw Duan Ho and company running over. Children were innocent and naive. Duan Lei, who was sitting on a short wooden stool outside the courtyard, had already stood up. Seeing that his son Duan Ho had returned, his face darkened as he scolded loudly. Ho, where have you been fooling around? Although Duan Lei was usually simple and honest, he was not inferior when it came to teaching children a lesson. It was a pity that Duan Ho had grown up with his mother, and his mother could not control him. Hence, Duan Ho had been very willful since he was young. Dad. Duan Ho ran back with his group of brothers without looking back, as if they were running away from something terrifying. How old are you yet you're still so rash? Where are your manners? Duan Lei could not help scowling. Duan Ho had already brought the group of people to Duan Lei. Duan Ho could not help asking Duan Lei, "Dad, there's a woman just now. She's so scary. She seems to know you too. I heard her say that she's called." "Yeah, Yun Jian." Chapter 497. Dad, you really know that woman? This time, it was Duan Ho's turn to be surprised. Even Duan Ho's buddies were flabbergasted. Who was Duan Lei? It could be said that Duan Ho and his buddies dared to stir up trouble in Xinjiang town because they were using Duan Lei's name. Poor Duan Lei had no idea that his son had been using his name to oppress others for so long. Duan Lei had always thought that his son, Duan Ho, was just a little mischievous. Otherwise, even the usually simple and honest Duan Lei would have the heart to beat his own son, Duan Ho. Despite Duan Lei's honesty, he was no slouch when it came to teaching his son a lesson. "What do you mean by that woman?" "Ho, shut up!" Duan Lei bellowed once he heard how Duan Ho addressed Yun Jian. It had been a long time since Duan Ho heard his father reprimand him in such a tone. He shrunk his neck, not daring to make another sound. Duan Lei was an elder of Falcon Hall after all, a founding member of Dragon Head Gang. Naturally, he was full of boldness when he shouted, "Brat, what did you do?" Duan Lei continued to bellow at his son. Duan Ho was so frightened by Duan Lei that he recounted everything that had happened in full detail. Duan Lei's face darkened as he listened. Then Duan Lei yanked his son's ear and bellowed, "You brat, you almost got me into trouble. Where's Sister Jian? Come with me and ask for forgiveness." Listening to what Duan Ho said, Duan Lei understood right away that Yun Jian did not have the time to kill his son back then because she was giving him face. Ouch! Ouch! Dad, is that woman really that good? Duan Ho was not a woman, so he was not as delicate as a woman. He howled as Duan Lei yanked him by the ear, but he was dragged to the basketball court. Duan Lei did not mention Yun Jian's identity, which baffled Duan Ho and his buddies even more. Since Duan Lei had made his move, no one dared to escape, so they followed him back the way they came. On the basketball court, Ce held Yun Jian's little face and tossed and turned in bed. In the end, he reluctantly pulled away from her mouth. There was still a long way to go. In the future, no one would even dream of touching his woman. Just like that, Ce kissed Yun Jian in front of Yuan Yingjun. Yun Jian's face was flushed red. She was so shy that she really looked like an ordinary girl in her third year of middle school. Yuan Yingjun, who was watching from the side, almost vomited blood. Ce did it on purpose. He purposely kissed Yun Jian in front of Yuan Yingjun. Moreover, the more intimate they got, the more Yuan Yingjun felt like his spirit was about to collapse. However, without Ce and Yun Jian's orders, Yuan Yingjun didn't even dare to leave. There was also Yuan Yingjun and his group of brothers. Other than Yuan Yingjun and the others who were frightened, Lu Fian, Li Xiangyi, and the others who were standing at the side quickly recovered from the shock. Of course, they were also shocked by Ce's daring move. "Damn you! Move faster!" Duan Lei's bellow came from the basketball court. Duan Lei's house was not far from the basketball court, only a few streets away. Duan Lei was still pulling Duan Ho's ear as he hurried back with a group of people. Duan Lei pulled Duan Ho's ear and arrived at the basketball court in no time. Yuan Yingjun could not help gasping at the sight. Judging by his age, the only person who could pull Duan Ho's ear like this was probably Falcon Hall's elder, Duan Lei. Duan Lei dragged Duan Ho to Yun Jian and greeted Yun Jian respectfully, "Sister Jian." Chapter 498. Duan Ho shuddered where he stood in fright at his father's roar. He, Duan Ho, could stir up trouble outside and even make himself look cool, but he dared not even fart in front of his own father. Duan Ho did not know what he did wrong, but he still looked up at Yun Jian shakily after being yelled at by Duan Lei and stammered, I'm sorry." Everyone who saw the scene was stupefied. Duan Ho, who was usually so arrogant, was actually apologizing to Yun Jian? This was not the only shocking part. Duan Ho's apology was coerced by Falcon Hall's founding member, Duan Lei, to do it. One must know that Duan Ho usually relied on Duan Lei's reputation to intimidate everyone. Now, Duan Lei had personally dragged Duan Ho here to apologize to Yun Jian. What did this mean? It could only mean one thing. Yun Jian's identity was more powerful than Duan Lei's. What could Yun Jian be then? Everyone was skeptical. Lu Fian, on the other hand, had a rough idea. Yun Jian had revealed her identity as an advanced special forces soldier the last time and forced the police to reinvestigate her father's case. However, an advanced special forces soldier should not be enough to scare a founding member of Falcon Hall to this extent, right? Was Duan Lei disregarding his dignity and dragging his son here to apologize to Yun Jian? It's okay. Yun Jian pressed her lips together. Siyi's lingering warmth lingered on her lips. It was obvious that Yun Jian did not plan to pursue Duan Ho's mistake. Sister Jian, it's my fault for not teaching my son well. I've embarrassed myself in front of you. Duan Lei smacked Duan Ho's head hard, eliciting a howl from the latter. Duan Lei looked at Yun Jian and said apologetically. Yun Jian's lips curled into a half-smile before she licked them and asked Duan Lei, "You're from Xinjiang town too?" Back then in Xinjiang town, she had not seen Duan Lei. Since she had nothing to do now, Yun Jian asked out of curiosity. My parents stayed in Xinjiang town and didn't want to go to Longmen City, so I brought my family back to Xinjiang town for the new year, Duan Lei explained with a smile. Actually, Duan Lei was also slightly surprised when he heard that Yun Jian was in Xinjiang town. But after thinking about it, he no longer felt that it was a coincidence. Longmen City was only so big. All the towns and suburbs only covered this area. Xinjiang town could be considered a town with a relatively large population, and it was made up of many neighboring villages. Naturally, the population was large. It was Chinese New Year now. There was a joke that went like this. During the Lunar New Year, even gangsters had to rush home to celebrate the Lunar New Year. It was true that Duan Lei was a gangster, but that didn't mean that he wouldn't go home for the New Year. Only a handful of people from Falcon Hall remained in the headquarters. Even Su Zetian had taken his wife and son to visit their relatives for the New Year. Yun Jian and Duan Lei chatted for a bit while Ce, who stood beside them, said nothing. The others merely watched and listened as well. Li Xiangyi and the others gradually lost interest in playing basketball. When they were done, Yun Jian bade farewell to Duan Lei. Beckoning Li Xiangyi, Lu Fian, and the others to leave with her and Ce, Yuan Yingjun, who was lying on the ground, breathed a sigh of relief. It was only now that Yun Jian had completely left with Ce that he heaved a sigh of relief. Dad, who is she? Why did you insist that I apologize just now? Yuan Yingjun and the others heard Duan Ho's question to Duan Lei. Yuan Yingjun and the others pricked up their ears. Chapter 499. Once Duan Lei said that, everyone there was in a state of fear and disbelief. Falcon Hall was originally Dragon Head Gang. Before Yun Jian took over Dragon Head Gang and renamed it to the current Falcon Hall was still ranked at the bottom in Jia Province. At that time, Flying Passage, ranked second in Jia Province, was undoubtedly something Falcon Hall could only admire but never take seriously. Dragon Head Gang back then, which was now Falcon Hall, was famous in Longmen City, but it was only limited to Longmen City. In the entire Jia Province, Dragon Head Gang was not even ranked. Since Yun Jian took over, however, Dragon Head Gang was renamed to Falcon Hall. Everything had changed. In just a short time, the new boss of Falcon Hall had made a name for herself in the National Mafia Tea Party. He turned around and killed the boss of Flying Passage all by himself, then took advantage of the chaos in Flying Passage's ranks to take over the entire organization. Anyone who knew a thing or two about the black market would know how terrifying the new boss of Falcon Hall was. Now they were suddenly told that the person who had taken the entire black market by storm was the spirited Yun Jian, who was dressed like a regular student with her hair tied in a high ponytail. It was Yun Jian, who would be 16 years old after the new year. How could the people there not be shocked? How could they not be terrified? No. Impossible? How can Xiao Jian be Falcon Hall's boss? This is impossible. Yuan Yingjun stood up shakily in fear. His momentary panic made him forget that he was supposed to be afraid in front of Duan Lei and Duan Ho. There was only one image left in Yuan Yingjun's mind. How was it possible? How could Xiao Jian be Falcon Hall's boss? How long had she left Xinjiang town? Probably half a year at most? She had become Falcon Hall's boss in half a year? Duan Lei and Falcon Hall's elders alone were enough to scare Yuan Yingjun. Yet, Yuan Yingjun was utterly shocked. Do you think I'd spout nonsense? Duan Lei glared at Yuan Ingjun and retorted bluntly. Sister Jian, she's the pride of Falcon Hall. Duan Lei said, a deep sense of pride welling up in him. Yuan Ingjun, who was standing in place, completely collapsed the moment Duan Lei said this. If Yuan Ingjun was still unhappy about not being able to get Yun Jian, he was now in complete despair. He and Yun Jian. Was there still a possibility? She was the current boss of Falcon Hall. Therefore the answer was no. When Yun Jian separated from Li Xiangyi and the others, she even taught them a few basic dunking moves. Li Xiangyi and the others were all basketball enthusiasts, so they listened very carefully to Yun Jian's technique. After Li Xiangyi and the others parted ways with Yun Jian, Lu Fian also left. On the first day of the Lunar New Year, it was not that she did not want to visit her parents. She still had to go. After separating from Lu Fian and Li Xiangyi, Yun Jian went back to Zhang Meihua's house with Ce. Xinjiang town was not big. It was only a short walk from the basketball court to Zhang Meihua's house. However, as soon as he returned to Zhang Meihua's house, he saw an uninvited guest standing outside the courtyard. It was Lu Lanhua. Lu Lanhua was Yun Jian's grandmother in name, as well as the mother of her nominal father, Yun Gang. Qin Yiru, you used to be the daughter-in-law of the Yun family. What's wrong with me borrowing some money from you today? Don't think I don't know that you had Yun Jian send a sum of money to the Lu family not too long ago. The Lu family isn't related to you. Why are you giving them money? To think that I treated you so well back then. So, you're this kind of person. Lu Lanhua was currently putting on airs as she came knocking. The Lu family Lu Lanhua mentioned was Lu Fian's family. Word had spread in town that Lu Fian's family had received a sum of money and it was from Yun Jian. Once Lu Lanhua heard that Qin Yiru was earning money now, she could not help coming over to trick her again. Even if Qin Yiru was no longer her daughter-in-law. Chapter 500. Although Lu Lanhua said that she was borrowing money, in reality, if Qin Yiru lent her money, she would not be able to get it back. At this moment, Qin Yiru and Gu Junjian, who had not left yet, were standing at the entrance of the courtyard, listening to Lu Lanhua's scolding. Obviously, Yun Jian had just returned and Lu Lanhua had just arrived. The moment she arrived, Lu Lanhua scolded Qin Yiru in front of Gu Junjian. Zhang Meihua and Qin Liqian's family had gone out to pay New Year's greetings. On the first day of the new year, Qin Yiru was probably the only one who did not have anywhere to go. Gu Junjian was not in a hurry to go back. After all, he would be alone at home. Since he got along well with Yun Jian's mother, Qin Yiru, he stayed to chat for a while and even helped Qin Yiru with a lot of housework. Lu Lanhua had a sharp tongue and was famous for being a shrew in Xinjiang town. Therefore, under Lu Lanhua's aggressive words, Qin Yiru did not even have the time to reply. Obviously, Qin Yiru was very angry at this moment. Gu Junjian stood in front of Lu Lanhua, preventing her from scolding Qin Yiru directly. Yun Jian had just returned home and heard Lu Lanhua's words when she saw Gu Junjian, who was 1.8 meters tall and mighty, standing in front of Qin Yiru and fighting back against the uncultured Lu Lanhua. Auntie, she has already divorced your son. Logically speaking, she doesn't have to support you. Gu Junjian stood beside Qin Yiru the whole time. As if they had found a soulmate in life, they told each other everything. Gu Junjian already knew about the situation in Qin Yiru's family. On the first day of the new year, she did not go out to pay New Year's greetings, but her ex-mother-in-law came to ask for money. Gu Junjian knew that it was not appropriate for him to interrupt as an outsider, but this matter was too unreasonable. Even as an outsider, Gu Junjian could not stand it. Who do you think you are? Looking at Gu Junjian, who stood out suddenly, Lu Lanhua's frown deepened. Her wrinkled brows, her wrinkled face scrunched up, looking menacing. Before Gu Junjian could reply, Lu Lanhua pointed at Qin Yiru and hollered, "You, no wonder you were so resolute when you divorced my ganger. You have another man. Ha, you're a woman who doesn't behave herself." She was clearly here to ask for money, but Lu Lanhua spoke without thinking. She was Lu Lanhua's and Lu Lanhua? Lu Lanhua's right. Lu's right, Yunza's to her family's to the end, to be to her to be a A's twos's. Yiru. He's to me to visit. He to me to Zhang Yun. S. I to E. Haynes. I've raised Xiao Jian and Xiao E single-handedly. Your son and I are divorced too. If we're being honest, Yun Gang must give Xiao Jian and Xiao E a monthly allowance since they're still underage. Otherwise I can sue him. I didn't ask you for the money either. I didn't take anything from your family that should be taken away or shouldn't be taken away. I live by my conscience and I'm worthy of myself. I asked Xiao Jian to send the money to the Lu family. I saved it painstakingly. The money belongs to me. Who are you to decide for me? It's my freedom to spend it however I want. So, please leave now. Qin Yiru spat out a torrent of words, her voice louder than Lu Lanhua's. This time, Qin Yiru was truly enraged. Qin Yiru's outburst made even Yun Jian, who was about to enter the yard to stand up for her mother, stop in her tracks. Chapter 501. Lu Lanhua was taken aback. To Lu Lanhua, her ex-daughter-in-law was a weak and incompetent person who could be used as a money-making tool. Other than that, she was useless. Qin Yiru was easy to bully. She had been weak and meek all her life. When she was living with Yun Gang, she had the final say. Therefore, even after Qin Yiru and Yun Gang got divorced, Lu Lanhua still dared to shamelessly ask for money. Moreover, it was the kind that had no conscience. Lu Lanhua had been short of money recently. Lu Lanhua had always been afraid of her husband, Yun Zhong. Coincidentally, Yun Zhong had taken a car alone to visit his friend today. Using this opportunity and the fact that she was short of money recently, Lu Lanhua came to Qin Yiru to ask for money. Lu Lanhua's own son, Yun Gang, was not born to be a moneymaker. After Qin Yiru left, Lu Lanhua's source of income was cut off. How could an unfilial son like Yun Gang bring money home? Therefore, when Lu Lanhua ran out of money, the first person she thought of was Qin Yiru. Moreover, the news about Lu Fian's family had been spreading like wildfire recently. Qin Yiru had even given Lu Fian's family a sum of money. She had so much money, but instead of giving it to her, she gave it to someone else. When Lu Lanhua first heard this news, she was furious. Therefore, Lu Lanhua did not say anything and took the opportunity to go to Qin Yiru's place. However, she did not expect that Qin Yiru, who had always been obedient in front of her, would also be furious. In her anger, she directly asked her to leave. You. Lu Lanhua shouted a few US, but each word was weaker than the last. She really didn't care about it. Especially when she heard Qin Yiru say that Yun Jian and Yun Yi were with Qin Yiru. If Yun Gang did not give them living expenses, they could appeal to the higher-ups. Lu Lanhua panicked. She was really afraid that Qin Yiru would sue and ask her family to use the money to support Yun Jian and Yun Yi. Asking her to take the money was worse than asking for Lu Lanhua's life. When Yun Jian saw that Qin Yiru was resisting so fiercely, she smiled. She knew that even if she didn't do anything, her mother would be able to handle this matter. Thus, Yun Jian reached out and grabbed Si Yi's hand. Before Qin Yiru and the others realized that she and Si Yi had returned, she pulled Si Yi to the side and hid. Let's not make a sound. Let's climb up the roof and take a look, Yun Jian said softly to Si Yi. As she spoke, Yun Jian pulled Si Yi to a small house near Zhang Meihua's house. Zhang Meihua's house was surrounded by low houses. Zhang Meihua's house was also a low house. Nowadays, there were very few people who built their houses to be 3 or 4 stories high. When Yun Jian and Si Yi arrived at the nearby low house, she gestured for Si Yi to nimbly climb up the roof from the low house's sink. The two of them were very skillful. In no time, they had nimbly climbed up the roof. Si Yi expressed that he had never done such a wretched thing in his life, climbing up other people's roofs. However, he had never rejected Yun Jian's words. Coincidentally, this low house allowed them to see and hear the conversation and actions of Qin Yiru and the others. Please leave. Qin Yiru's attitude was resolute. She pointed at the door and shouted at Lu Lanhua. Good for you. You've really grown up. You've forgotten how well I treated you in the past. Lu Lanhua spat out the word you, after a long time. She was lying through her teeth. Chapter 502. Lu Lanhua had just taken 2 steps out of the courtyard when Yun Jian, who was lying on the roof, did not bother to hide her tracks. She flipped her hand and a stone appeared in her palm. Before she went up the roof, she had brought a stone with her. This was the perfect time to use it. Yun Jian pursed her lips. At the same time, the stone in her hand flew towards Lu Lanhua, who was about to leave. Lu Lanhua's raised but swayed left and right as she left arrogantly. Suddenly, a stone hit the acupuncture point on Lu Lanhua's thigh at the speed of light. Lu Lanhua's knees gave way instantly. Moreover, she was still maintaining her arrogant posture and did not pay attention to her feet. By the time Lu Lanhua's knees went soft, it was already too late for her to stabilize her feet. Coincidentally, the wind had been chilly last night and it had drizzled on New Year's Eve. Right now, the courtyard was filled with puddles of water. Lu Lanhua's legs went soft, and she fell forward with her chest facing down. Right in front of her was the puddle of muddy water that had accumulated the most water in the courtyard. Ah! Lu Lanhua screamed in panic the moment she fell. However, she could not steady herself and fell into the puddle of water. With Lu Lanhua's fall, the cement in the puddle splashed up before falling back to the ground. In the end, the cement stained Lu Lanhua's new clothes. Lu Lanhua got up almost at the same time. However, when she saw that her new clothes were stained with water, Lu Lanhua screamed, "Ah! Clothes! My new clothes!" Today was the first day of the new year. That was why Lu Lanhua was willing to wear the new clothes that she had bought with gritted teeth. However, at this moment, the bright red and green clothes were stained with muddy water. If one were to ask Lu Lanhua how she felt at this moment, she would definitely be extremely upset. At first glance, people would think that Lu Lanhua had fallen down herself. However, Gu Junjian had noticed Yun Jian's undisguised attack just now. No matter what, Gu Junjian was the leader of the advanced special forces. He held a high position and had been in the special forces for so many years. If he didn't even have this much insight, how could he manage the entire advanced special forces? Following the path, Gu Junjian spotted Yun Jian and Ce hiding under a nearby roof. He was dumbfounded. He saw that Yun Jian was putting her index finger to her lips, indicating for him not to make a sound. Gu Junjian understood. He was not the kind of person who would be fair like Mother Mary, so he did not say anything. "You fell on your own. You can't blame us." Qin Yiru knew what kind of person Lu Lanhua was, so she spoke first. Having lived with people like Lu Lanhua for more than 10 years, Qin Yiru obviously understood Lu Lanhua's character. If she did not say this, Lu Lanhua would probably stand up and point at her nose again, saying that it was Qin Yiru's fault that she had fallen just now. Lu Lanhua would even twist the truth and say that she had fallen because Qin Yiru did not fill up the puddle in the yard. Yun Jian, who was hiding in the distance, smiled. She saw that Lu Lanhua was finally driven away by her own mother and smiled knowingly. At least Qin Yiru had learned how to retaliate now. Hiding on the roof, Yun Jian watched as Gu Junjian accompanied Qin Yiru, who was still angry, into the house. She was about to tell Ce that they should go back too when a little boy's voice came from behind. "Mommy, why did brother and sister climb so high?" A little boy pointed at Yun Jian and Ce and asked curiously. Chapter 503. Ce's face darkened when he heard the little boy's mother's voice behind him. Then, the little boy's mother ran away as if she was avoiding the plague. Yun Jian's mouth twitched slightly. She leaned against the roof and tilted her head to look at Ce with a slight smile on her face. It was hard to imagine Ce being called a fool. Now that she saw it, it was indeed fun. "Wait." Ce stood on the side and looked at Yun Jian's smirk. He studied her from head to toe and even moved his gaze down to stare at her plump breasts before he spoke in a magnetic tone. The few glances made Yun Jian shudder. It was the feeling of being stared at to the point of uneasiness. "I'm going home." Yun Jian pursed her lips and stood up. In the next second, she stood straight on the roof. The roof wasn't very high. It was only about 2 to 3 meters high. However, if a normal person jumped down from such a high roof, they wouldn't die, but they would at least suffer fractures. She leaped down from the back of the roof. Her jump was as light as if she were standing on flat ground, jumping up and then landing back down. After doing half a somersault in the air, Yun Jian landed steadily. She jumped down from the back door of the house because Lu Lanhua was passing by the front door. If she jumped down from the front door, she would directly collide with Lu Lanhua. Behind the house, There was an old man sitting with his legs crossed and humming a song leisurely while holding a hand warmer. This old man sat under the roof tiles of the house. Suddenly, he saw a slender figure jump down from above. The old man was so frightened that his heart tightened. When he saw Yunjian clearly, the old man suddenly shouted in fright, "Oh my God, young lady, could you have said hello before you came down? You scared this old man." Just as the old man said this, he saw another slender figure jump down from above him. This time, the old man was so frightened that he directly threw the hand warmer on the ground with a plop sound. "Oh my God, what the hell? Another one came down. You two are hiding on my roof? What did you do?" The old man stared blankly at Yunjian and Ce, who had just come down. "We're going to do something special." Ce walked over and put her arm around Yunjian's shoulder. They walked around the house and headed towards Zhang Meihua's house. The old grandpa stood rooted to the ground and wanted to cry. Clearly, he had misunderstood something. Yunjian and Ce had just returned to Zhang Meihua's house. When they opened the door, they saw Gu Junjian resting his hands on Qin Yiru's shoulders. He seemed to be comforting her. When the door was suddenly opened, Gu Junjian was shocked. He quickly withdrew his hand from Qin Yiru's shoulder. Yunjian suddenly smiled awkwardly. She had come back at the wrong time. At this moment, Xiao Yunju's mumbling voice came from the stairs. "Big sister, big brother Ce, I want a hug too. I want a hug like Uncle Gu and Mama Qin." Xiao Yunju had just woken up from his afternoon nap. His hazy little face looked rosy and seductive. Qin Yiru treated Xiao Yunju as her own son. Xiao Yunju also called Qin Yiru Mama Qin. The reason why she added the word Qin was because Qin Yiru felt that Xiao Yunju had his own biological mother. In spite of it, Yunju's words seemed to have pointed out something incredible. Yunjian narrowed her eyes and glanced sideways. She happened to see Gu Yunjian's old face turn red. Chapter 504. Even Qin Yiru, whose face had turned ugly because of Lu Lanhua's antics, instantly came back to her senses. Her radiant face immediately had a tinge of redness. Because her work was going smoothly and her children were filial, Qin Yiru was now not under much pressure. In just a few short months, she seemed to have changed into a different person. Even the wrinkles on her face had disappeared without a trace. Qin Yiru looked 10 years younger than before. In addition, Qin Yiru was good-looking to begin with. She had overworked herself previously, so she looked like an old woman in her 50s or 60s despite being in her 40s. Now that the pressure had lessened, her delicate features began to show up again. Therefore, it was not difficult to see that Yunjian's delicate and beautiful appearance was inherited from Qin Yiru's genes. Otherwise, her brother Yun-Yi and the original owner of the body, Yunjian, would not have such stunning looks. "Xiao Zhu, don't talk nonsense." Qin Yiru's face was full of shyness, especially after being exposed in front of Ce and Yunjian. Although there was indeed something going on between her and Gu Junjian, it was normal for a person to be shy when faced with this kind of situation. "Mrs. Qin, Xiao Zhu is not talking nonsense." Xiao Yunju stood at the top of the stairs on the second floor. His sleepiness had gradually dissipated. His small eyes rolled around as he looked at Qin Yiru and pouted. Qin Yiru usually spoiled Xiao Yunju, so Xiao Yunju did not hold back when he said that. Qin Yiru originally wanted to signal Xiao Yunju to change his words, but Xiao Yunju was still young. He did not realize how intimate his words were. Qin Yiru's face instantly turned red. She looked like she was in love with him. Gu Junjian stood to the side and watched. He originally wanted to clarify his words, but he suddenly stopped. Just as Qin Yiru and Xiao Yunju were talking, Ce had already arrived in front of Xiao Yunju. He squatted down and gently picked up Xiao Yunju. His seductive lips curled up slightly. Ahem. Yunjian suddenly coughed softly. Her beautiful eyes looked down at the ground. Suddenly she smiled and said, "Mom, we'll go upstairs first." In this situation, she was embarrassed to stay here any longer. "Okay." Qin Yiru's face was still a little red, but she nodded. Yunjian then ran upstairs and pushed Xiao Yunju and Ce. She pushed and pushed her way to the second floor. At this time, only Qin Yiru and Gu Junjian were downstairs. Qin Yiru then said, "Officer Gu, thank you for just now. The children almost misunderstood. I'm sorry. You don't have to apologize. I was the one who suddenly hugged you. I should be the one apologizing, Gu Junjian said to Qin Yiru. Then the two of them fell silent. When Qin Yiru returned to her room after chasing Lu Lanhua away, her tears fell. No one could understand the pain she had suffered for so many years. For some reason, when Gu Junjian looked at Qin Yiru, it was as if he was looking at his deceased mother. His deceased father had cheated on her. When his mother was alive, she washed her face with tears every day. Gu Yunjian's heart tightened. When he came back to his senses, he had already taken the initiative to hug Qin Yiru. Even he did not expect that to happen. Therefore, Gu Junjian was stunned. Coincidentally, Xiao Yunzhu woke up at this time. He stood at the top of the stairs and saw the scene just now. Chapter 505. While Qin Yiru and Gu Junjian were still staring at each other downstairs, Yunjian, who had escaped to the second floor, pushed Ce and Xiao Yunzhu into the room she was temporarily staying in. It was only when they were hiding in the room that Yunjian took a deep breath. She did not think that it was inappropriate for Gu Junjian to stay in the beginning. After all, Gu Junjian had come from Longmen City and it was a little late last night. Since he was staying, so be it. However, from the situation just now, she could see the difference no matter how dumb she was. Qin Yiru's bitterness and Gu Yunjian's reaction. Yunjian was sure that Qin Yiru and Gu Junjian were not what Qin Yiru wanted to clarify. Since Qin Yiru and Yungang's divorce, Qin Yiru's life had been smoother. This was what Yunjian was glad about. What about when Qin Yiru grew old? Would she be alone for the rest of her life? Yunjian had actually thought about letting Qin Yiru find a partner. However, it was not easy to find one just because one wanted to. To prevent Qin Yiru from meeting someone like Yungang again, Yunjian had not mentioned it. However, if Qin Yiru's partner was Gu Junjian, Yunjian would agree wholeheartedly. Although Gu Junjian held a high position, he was an upright person. At the same time, it could be seen that he took good care of the candidates for the advanced special forces. All in all, he was protective of his own people. Of course, if Gu Junjian was married, Yunjian would not agree. After all, if his legal wife was still around, would Qin Yiru not become a mistress with Gu Junjian? It was not so easy to be a mistress. A mistress was an existence that everyone loathed. Therefore, if Gu Junjian was married, Yunjian would be the first to object. Standing in her temporary residence, Yunjian rested her chin on her hand as her beautiful eyes stared at a spot on the floor. Her high ponytail reflected her spirited attitude. She was spirited yet beautiful, making Ci's heart itch. If he was not carrying Xiao Yunzhu, he would definitely bite her alluring lips right now. Xiao Yunzhu was impatient, waving his tiny hands in front of Yunjian for a while as he called out anxiously, "Jia jia jia." Yunzhu's last shout drew Yunjian's attention back to him. What's wrong? Yunjian looked up at Xiao Yunzhu. Jejia, Xiao Zhu wants a hug from Jejia. Xiao Yunzhu smiled mischievously as he stretched out his hands, waiting for Yunjian to hug him. Yunjian casually took Xiao Yunzhu from Ci's arms. After staying in the room for an entire afternoon, Yunjian and Ci only brought Xiao Yunzhu downstairs when it was time for dinner. Qin Yiru and Gu Junjian had returned to normal. The two of them chatted with each other and were very congenial. It was as if the awkward situation just now had never happened. It had to be said that Qin Yiru and Gu Junjian always had endless things to talk about. At that moment, seeing Yunjian and Ce bringing Xiao Yunzhu downstairs, Gu Junjian quickly waved at Yunjian. Although Yunjian did not understand, she passed Xiao Yunzhu's tiny hand to Ce and walked toward Gu Junjian. Yunjian, I just received a notice from the higher-ups. On the 10th day of the new year, all members of Team Monarch must gather in the military because there's a new batch of special forces candidates in the military. They're the same age as all of you, but they're very strong. Chapter 506. Considering the limited number of advanced special forces members, if they win the PK this time, you'll have to give up your current advanced special forces position to them. This is the higher-ups arrangement. There's nothing I can do about it. But Yunjian, I believe you can do it. Gu Junjian finished his speech rather seriously. He had just received this news through a text message on his phone. Gu Yunjian's eyelids twitched when he first read the notification from his higher-ups. Gu Junjian was not the only captain of the Advanced Special Forces. With how big country Z was, naturally, Gu Junjian was not the only captain of the Advanced Special Forces. The other group consisted of Advanced Special Forces candidates taught by a military officer who was Gu Yunjian's enemy. They were around the same age as Yunjian and the rest. However, recently, the new batch of Advanced Special Forces candidates were said to be very strong, 5 to 6 times stronger than the previous batch of Advanced Special Forces candidates. Each of them was almost as strong as an official Special Forces soldier. After that group of people showed their prowess, they actually applied to challenge Yunjian and the rest for the official Advanced Special Forces positions. That was why the higher-ups sent a message to Gu Junjian, asking Yunjian and the rest of Team Monarch to return to the military on the 10th day of the new year. Actually, it was almost impossible for Advanced Special Forces candidates like Yunjian and the rest to be directly promoted to Advanced Special Forces soldiers. It was also because of Yunjian and the rest's outstanding performance in the previous 2 missions that Gu Junjian applied to the higher-ups to fight for Yunjian and the rest. Hence, Yunjian and the rest were directly promoted to Advanced Special Forces soldiers. It was a great honor because ever since the selection of Advanced Special Forces candidates from the military, there had never been an Advanced Special Forces candidate who could skip the Special Forces and become an Advanced Special Forces soldier directly. Yunjian and the rest were selected to be Advanced Special Forces candidates because of their capabilities. On the other hand, all the Advanced Special Forces candidates were selected from talented youths. On the other hand, the young men and women who became candidates for the Advanced Special Forces had an absolute advantage over those who relied on military school to become Special Forces soldiers step by step. It was only a matter of time before anyone who became an Advanced Special Forces candidate became an Advanced Special Forces soldier. Of course, only 1 in a million could become an Advanced Special Forces soldier. Out of 10,000 Special Forces, there might not even be 100 Advanced Special Forces. Hence, the fact that Yunjian's team of 7 had already become Advanced Special Forces soldiers at such a young age was the envy of many. As for the new batch of Advanced Special Forces candidates, they were the youths trained by Gu Yunjian's nemesis, AI Guoxuan, who was also the leader of the Advanced Special Forces. Due to their valiant abilities, they had applied to challenge Yunjian's Team Monarch to replace Yunjian and her team in the Advanced Special Forces. To Gu Junjian and Yunjian's team of 7, accepting the challenge would not benefit them at all. After all, the other party was here to snatch their positions. If Yunjian's team of 7 lost, they would have to give up their current Advanced Special Forces positions to the other party. If that happened, Yunjian's team of 7 would have to start all over again as Advanced Special Forces candidates. Gu Junjian was not worried about Yunjian, but since the other party had accepted the challenge, it would definitely be a team battle. In other words, if one person in the team was weak, the entire team would be affected. Since Gu Junjian and AI Guoxuan were rivals, AI Guoxuan had purposely found a group of capable youths to snatch Yunjian's team of 7's Advanced Special Forces positions so that he could suppress Gu Junjian in terms of reputation. Chapter 507. The 10th of the new year? That means there are still 9 days left? Yunjian raised a brow, her red lips curling into a slight smile. There was a refined glow on her face, making her look radiant. Her high ponytail cascaded down from the top of her head like a waterfall, miraculously making Yunjian look spirited. Yunjian had never cut her hair since her rebirth. Her long black hair was so smooth and shiny that it reached her waist even if she tied it into a high ponytail. Yunjian looked even more ravishing in this state. The new year had just passed and Yunjian was now 16 years old. At 16, Yunjian was still developing, her twin mounds slightly protruding under the thick down jacket. Gu Junjian naturally did not pay attention to Yunjian. He looked at Yunjian seriously and nodded at Yunjian. Yes, sir. Gu Junjian had received a notice from his superior that Team Monarch would have a PK with the ASF candidates trained by AI Guoxuan on the 10th of the new year. Time was tight. Gu Junjian was not worried about Yunjian because he had full confidence in Yunjian. Gu Junjian, on the other hand, was worried about the other 6 members of Team Monarch. There was no need to worry about Jiang Weiwei's ability. Although Jiang Weiwei's ability was incomparable to Yunjian's, she was the strongest among all the ASF candidates that Gu Junjian had trained over the years, other than Yunjian, who was a godly existence. However, a PK like this was a team battle. It was a battle between a small team and a small team. It was a battle of teamwork. To be honest, other than Yun Jian and Jiang Weiwei, Chu Ning and the other 5 members were only above average in terms of ability. Like Team Monarch, the ASF candidates trained by AI Guoxuan had a total of 7 members. However, everyone's ability was on par, and each of them was only slightly weaker than Jiang Weiwei. Gu Junjian couldn't help but feel a little flustered at the situation. Gu Junjian would never be happy to be oppressed by AI Guoxuan. 5 days is enough. Tell all Team Monarch members to gather at the military training camp on the 5th day of the new year. Under Gu Yunjian's solemn gaze, Yun Jian glanced at Gu Junjian, pursed her lips and spoke softly. Gu Junjian raised his head in surprise, then looked at Yun Jian in shock. He could not help but ask, "You are?" Could it be that Yun Jian intended for her to train the 5 weaker members of Team Monarch? However, starting from the 5th day of the new year, there were only 5 days until the 10th day of the new year. Could she make Chu Ning and the others stronger in 5 days? That wasn't realistic, was it? After all, what the army advocated was perseverance. Only by persevering and training hard every day could one obtain a substantial increase in strength during the long period of training. Just make the arrangements. Chapter 508. Upon hearing Yun Jian's words, Gu Junjian was stunned once again. However, since the other party was Yun Jian, Gu Junjian was not too surprised. After all, Yun Jian had given him plenty of surprises before. Moreover, other than trusting Yun Jian, Gu Junjian had no other choice. It was impossible for him to call everyone in Team Monarch back to the military training camp in the first few days of the new year. That was unrealistic because the first few days of the new year could be considered as everyone's rest day. During these few days, most people would stay at home. Gu Junjian would be too embarrassed to call them out and call them to the military training camp one by one. Moreover, even if they were to start training now, how could they improve a person's ability in just 9 days? Even if their ability could be improved after 9 days of training, there would not be much of a change. However, when Yun Jian said that she had the ability to improve Chu Ning and the other 4's abilities in just 5 days, Gu Junjian did not quite believe it, but he would still do as she said. There was only one reason for that. She never spoke empty words. Therefore, Gu Junjian chose to believe her unconditionally. "I'll arrange it." Gu Junjian stood behind Yun Jian and said to her, "Mm." Yun Jian did not turn around, but she lowered her eyes slightly and the curve of her lips lifted slightly. She had to admit that if Gu Junjian were to be her mother, Qin Yiru's husband, Yun Jian felt that, it was doable. "Sister, let's go out and play." Xiao Yunju was already holding Yun Jian's hand. He was very sensible and knew that Yun Jian and Gu Junjian were talking about business, so he did not say anything. When Yun Jian and Gu Junjian were done talking about business, Xiao Yunju said to Yun Jian. Xiao Yunju's well-behaved appearance let Yun Jian's heart soften. She immediately nodded, "Okay." "Xiao Jian, come back earlier. Dinner's almost ready. We can start eating when your grandma and the rest come back." When Qin Yiru heard that Yun Jian was going to take Xiao Yunju out to play, she immediately popped her head out of the kitchen and reminded her. "Okay, Mom." Yun Jian nodded at Qin Yiru. Yun Yi was also outside. Before Yun Yi went to Longmen City First Senior High School, she had studied in Xinjiang Town Junior High School where Yun Jian used to study. Of course, when he was studying in Xinjiang, he did not know his current best friend, Su Haokol. In Xinjiang Town, Yun Yi naturally had friends. At this time, Yun Yi had not returned home yet. However, Yun Yi would come home on time. "Let's go." Yun Jian squatted down and pinched Xiao Yunju's soft cheeks lovingly. She then tugged at Xiao Yunju and gave Ce a look before pulling Xiao Yunju out with Ce. When Yun Jian and Ce brought Xiao Yunju out, Gu Junjian slipped into the kitchen to help Qin Yiru. In the end, Gu Junjian could not help speaking up for Ce. "What do you think of the young man beside Yun Jian?" Gu Junjian did not know Ce's name yet. Qin Yiru paused at Gu Junjian's question before she smiled cheerfully. "Ae has a tough life. He lost his mother when he was young. He's quite pitiful." Gu Junjian did not mean anything else. He just wanted to test Qin Yiru on behalf of Yun Jian and Ce. Who knew that Qin Yiru did not even think about it? Other aspects, Gu Junjian guessed again. Chapter 509. Qin Yiru had already treated Ce as her own child. Of course, Qin Yiru did not think too much about it. She only felt that Ce was pitiful because she had lost her biological mother at a young age. From Qin Yiru's point of view, Ce had always been with Yunjian purely because she had a good relationship with Yunjian. It was the kind of care that an older brother had for his younger sister. Other than that, Qin Yiru could not think of any other reason. Gu Junjian asked what was on his mind. After receiving the appropriate response, he did not ask about it anymore. Although he had only interacted with Qin Yiru for a short period of time, from yesterday to today, they had only interacted for less than a day. However, the two of them were very compatible. It was said that it was difficult to find a soulmate. Gu Junjian felt that he had probably found a soulmate this time. Because Qin Yiru could understand his pain, he could also understand Qin Yiru's pain. At night, Yunjian and Ce brought Xiao Yunju to eat dinner before lying down on the bed. Xiao Yunju had already hidden under the covers. Because the night was silent and the cold wind was blowing, the outside of the house was extremely cold. Only the inside of the house had a little warmth. In 1998, in the villages and towns, there was no such thing as heating and other luxurious items to keep out the cold. Therefore, when winter arrived, people would hide under the covers early and use their own body heat to warm their beds. Of course, Ce could not share the same bed as Yunjian tonight. Moreover, Qin Yiru had already laid out the blankets for him, so he would sleep in the same room and bed as Gu Junjian. However, Ce and Gu Junjian did not share the same blanket. Xiao Yunju slept with Qin Yiru. Xiao Yunju was still young, and there was no difference between men and women. In addition, Qin Yiru was very good at taking care of the children. She raised Yun-Yi and Yunjian, so she naturally had her own way of taking care of the children. Zhang Meihua's family was not poor. They were one of the top families in the village. At Zhang Meihua's house, there were building blocks for children to play with. These building blocks were bought by Qin Lai for his daughter, Qin Fenger. In order to please Yunjian, Zhang Meihua found all the building blocks at home and moved them to Xiao Yunju's room for Xiao Yunju to play with. At this time, Xiao Yunju was hiding under the blanket. Yunjian was also in Xiao Yunju's room. Qin Yiru had not returned to her room to rest yet. Ce did not leave either. He was also lazing around in Xiao Yunju's room. At this moment, Ce was looking at Yunjian while Yunjian was looking at Xiao Yunju. Xiao Yunju, on the other hand, was looking at the building blocks in his hands, occasionally exclaiming excitedly, "Lion, lion! Jejia, Ce, Gij, Xiaozhu made a big lion. Heh, lion's bite. Awoo, let the lion eat Ce, Gij first, because Ce, Gij is a boy and Jejia is a girl." Children's logic was simple. Xiao Yunju's words made Yunjian and Ce laugh. All right, Xiaozhu should sleep. It's almost 9 o'clock. Qin Yiru walked in wearing pajamas and a thick down jacket. You guys go to sleep too. I've made your bed for you. It's all brand new. No one has slept in it before. Qin Yiru knew that Ce was more precious. This could be seen from Ce's Lamborghini sports car. Hence, when Qin Yiru arranged Ce's bed, she had also arranged a brand new bed for Ce. Since Qin Yiru had said so, Ce could only watch as Yunjian went back to her room before he turned ahead to go Yunjian's room. At night. Chapter 510. Ce was sleeping on the bed with his hands behind his head. When he heard Gu Yunjian's question, he was slightly taken aback, but his expression didn't change at all. The lights in the room were all off, but Gu Junjian, who was lying in front of the curtains, could still see Ce's every move clearly with the moonlight's reflection outside the curtains. His intuition told him that Ce wasn't simple. He could tell from Ce's every word and action. However, when Gu Junjian asked this question, Ce didn't reply at all. The night was quiet and there was nothing but the moonlight outside the window. Just when Gu Junjian thought Ce wouldn't reply to his question, Ce suddenly spoke. At the mention of Yunjian, Ce's voice immediately softened. I only want her for the rest of my life. He wasn't interested in her, it wasn't a spur-of-the-moment thing, and it wasn't just for fun. Since Ce had set his mind on her, he wouldn't go back on his words. After hearing Si Yi's reply, even Gu Junjian paused. He was stunned. Clearly, he hadn't expected Si Yi to have such deep feelings for Yun Jian. For the rest of his life. Many couples would use sweet words like, "I only want you for the rest of my life," to express their love. But how many of them could make it to the end? As for Si Yi, he might not be good at expressing his love. He might not have said any sweet words to Yun Jian. He might not even have said a simple, "I love you." However, true love should be buried in one's heart. It shouldn't be talked about and used sweet words to coax girls. Gu Junjian could clearly feel Si Yi's heart. That determination was something Gu Junjian couldn't achieve. Gu Junjian didn't say anything after that. Although Gu Junjian didn't say anything, he knew from the bottom of his heart that Si Yi and Yun Jian would be together sooner or later. The next morning, early in the morning, Yun Jian got up. Of course, other than Yun Jian, everyone who lived in Zhang Meihua's house also got up early. The second day of the new year was a joyous day. Early in the morning, Zhang Meihua called all of her immediate family members to pay their respects at Qin Youfu's grave. Qin Youfu had passed away many years ago. He was Yun Jian's grandfather. Among Qin Yiru's family, only Qin Youfu treated Qin Yiru and Yun Jian sincerely. It was a pity that he had already left this world. Zhang Meihua was Qin Youfu's first wife. Although she was vain, she treated her husband extremely well. Even after Qin Youfu passed away, Zhang Meihua never thought of finding another partner. Waking up early in the morning on the second day of the new year, she could already feel the chilly wind when she stretched her arms out from under the blanket. Going downstairs and opening the door, Yun Jian realized that it was already snowy outside. Zhe Province's Longmen City was located in the southern part of country Z. It rarely snowed in Longmen City throughout the year. When Yun Jian woke up, the snow outside was already piled up in a thick layer. Taking a breath, her lips parted slightly as warm air exhaled from the side of her mouth. The warm air went straight to the clouds. Yun Jian waited for Zhang Meihua and the rest to arrange the incense before going up the mountain to pay respects to her grandfather. She could vaguely recall from the original owner's memory how much her grandfather, whom she had never met, loved her when he was alive. When Yun Jian went, Si Yi went as well. Gu Junjian went as well out of courtesy. It was already noon when they returned home from paying their respects to Qin Youfu at the cemetery. For the whole day, Xiao Yunju played in the snow outside excitedly while Yun Jian and Si Yi fought in the snow with him. Chapter 5:11. On the fifth day of the new year, Yun Jian left Xinjiang town with Gu Junjian. Because of Yun Jian, Zhang Meihua treated Qin Yiru politely. Qin Yiru had nowhere to go during the new year, so she stayed in Xinjiang town. Xiao Yunju followed Qin Yiru. It had been some time since Si Yi rushed to Xinjiang town on the eve of the new year. And Han had a lot of work to do, so he left all his work on the eve of the new year and piled it on poor Adam and Mo Sen to look for Yun Jian. Yun Jian had gone to the military training camp, so she probably would not have time for the next few days. Therefore, Si Yi took the opportunity to return to Anhun. Yun Jian, on the other hand, rode in Gu Yunjian's military jeep all the way to the military training camp. In the military training camp, other than Yun Jian, the other 6 were already waiting in the camp after receiving the notice. Seeing Yun Jian and Gu Junjian get out of the car, Chu Ning and the other 5 hurried over. "You're all here? Gather and report your numbers." Gu Junjian, who was usually joking around, turned serious when it came to a formal occasion. When the 7 of them heard this, they immediately lined up and stood in formation, reporting their numbers one by one. "Sir, all 7 members of Team Monarch are here," Captain Lu Shiyun shouted. Summoning everyone to the military training camp on the 5th day of the Lunar New Year? Winter break had just started, and the festive mood hadn't even passed yet. Summoning everyone back meant that there must be something important to discuss. At that moment, everyone knew what was going on. No one would complain about Gu Junjian calling them back to the military so early. That was because someone was eyeing their advanced special forces positions. None of them would be willing to give up their advanced special forces positions. That was inevitable. I'm sure everyone knows the situation by calling all of you back so early. I'll be frank with you. The average standard of their team members is definitely above yours. On our side, Apart from Yun Jian and Jiang Weiwei, the other 5 of you are no match for him. Gu Junjian made everything clear. Naturally, Chu Ning and the other 4 would not be displeased with Gu Junjian for telling the truth. On the contrary, everyone present was eager to make a name for Team Monarch instead of being a burden. The PK with their team is scheduled for the 10th day of the new year. Now, you have 5 days to prepare. I will give these 5 days to Yun Jian and let Yun Jian train you. Gu Yunjian's words had always been straightforward. After Gu Junjian finished speaking, he added, "In these 5 days, I hope that everyone can do their best to improve their strength. I don't expect you to crush your opponent, but at the very least, you can't lose. Keep your positions in the advanced special forces. That's the least I ask of you." Gu Yunjian's words made everyone's blood boil. "Yes, sir." They replied in unison. They could not be defeated by their opponents as long as they could maintain a draw. However, for Chu Ning and the other 4, that was quite a challenge. "No, in 5 days, I'll make sure that all of you can defeat your opponents." At that moment, Yun Jian's ethereal words were heard. In these 5 days, she would make Chu Ning and the others experience a life worse than death training. Once they had gone through it, the advanced special forces candidates would not be a match for them. Even if they encountered high-level secret agents or assassins, they could escape easily. You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.